Very well. The next item on the order paper is that we move on to questions without notice. The first period of questions without notice is for the Minister of Treasury and Resources. Does any member have a question for that Minister?
Didn't I hit it?
Deputy Truscott.
Yes, thank you, sir. Sir, I was recently contacted by a constituent complaining about how difficult it was to contact the tax department by phone. This is, I understand, an ongoing problem at the department. So could the Treasury Minister advise what measures are being put in place to address this unsatisfactory situation?
Minister.
Thank you, sir, and good afternoon to everybody. I completely understand where the Deputy's question is coming from. There have been a lot of correspondence issues with the tax department. They have had a huge amount of changes to do to the IT system, to the move from Cyril Le to Lamotte Street, and with the change in the rather antiquated 1961 laws, which we're doing with the PYB to CYB change. And also later on this year, the independent tax change. So there's a lot going on, but everybody holds their hands up completely to say that, yes, there has been a delay in answering calls, largely due to the situation where there is no face-to-face dealing with tax issues because of the COVID situation, but it is improving and more resources have been allocated in the terms of staffing to Revenue Jersey in order to deal with this. So I think Revenue Jersey and myself would say quite acknowledge there's been a big problem, but it is improving. Thank you.
Supplementary question, Deputy?
Yes, please. I thank the Minister for her answer. Just in a timescale, could the Minister advise how soon we can expect to see an improvement in telephone call pickup times? Thank you, sir.
Yes,
thank you, sir. Yes, it has changed. I've got the figures in front of me, actually. The average waiting time in April was 7 minutes, compared to March, which was 21.8 minutes, back to February, which was 9 minutes. So it is constantly changing and it is improving, as I say, with extra resources in staffing is helping hugely. Thank you.
Senator Moore.
Thank you, sir. Could the Minister confirm when tranche 2 of the Fiscal Stimulus Fund will be agreed and announced, please?
Yes, thank you, sir. It has taken, as the Senator will know, longer than we thought because of the huge number of people applying for the funding, both in tranche 1 and tranche 2. But I'm hopefully going to be able to make it the public. I haven't seen the recommendations as yet from the Fiscal Stimulus Oversight Group. So as soon as I have, we'll be able to make it public. But a scrutiny, corporate services scrutiny panel will, of course, have notification beforehand. Thank you.
Supplementary question, Senator.
Please, sir. Thank you. Could the Minister commit to giving the scrutiny panel adequate time this time in which to consider the detail behind the second tranche of her decisions? And equally, is the Minister assured and can she give the Assembly her reassurance that this tranche will not focus on minor capital projects that would contribute to an already overheated construction industry?
As I said in my answer to the Senator's first question, I have not seen the recommendations as yet. I do not sit on the Fiscal Stimulus Oversight Group. So until I see the recommendations, I won't know what proportion are I say quote unquote construction because as the Senator rightly said, they are minor projects in as much as they have to be completed by the end of the year. So they're not major construction projects as such. And we've had lots of conversations with the construction industry, construction council, who say that they can certainly deal with these minor projects. I don't mean any way derisory, but smaller projects than major construction projects. And of course, we will ensure that scrutiny has as much time as possible. Thank you.
Deputy Morell.
Thank you, sir. And I was wondering if the Treasury Minister would mind providing the Assembly with an update as to the most recent revenue projections for, or most recent revenue forecasts for 2021, and whether they are showing a better or worse picture than had previously been forecast. Thank you, sir.
Minister.
Thank you, sir. Yes. We had the latest report from the Fiscal Policy Panel, as the Deputy will be aware, and I think it's been very changed from their last report of October 2020, in as much as the interest rates have changed considerably. There's been a strong performance for funds under administration in Jersey, which grew by 9%. It is a big change, but equally they are advocating caution in moving forward. There's been a big boost in housing, as again the Deputy will be aware, but we move forward very cautiously, and of course our forecast and budget will be included in the government plan for 2022-2025. Thank you.
Supplementary question, Deputy?
Yes, please, sir. I'll slightly restate my question. Would the Minister please provide the Assembly with the most recent update as to tax receipts, and whether tax receipts are looking to be higher or lower than had previously been forecast? Thank you, sir.
Minister.
Yes, sir, thank you. Obviously, this is still a year in arrears in most cases, and the personal tax returns, we've so far received over 26,000 completed tax returns as at 23rd of April, compared to 23,000 last year as at the end of April. This compared to only 3,000 this time last year difference, and the take-up of online filing continues to improve and is up 75% on this time last year, with 9,600 returns received online compared to 5,400. So if the Deputy wanted figures as opposed to numbers, I can't give him that because I don't have that information, but those are the increase in numbers that we've had returned. Thank you.
Well, Deputy Ward.
Thank you, sir. May I ask the Minister, as shareholder representative for Andium Homes, what influence does the Minister have over the possible increase in rents for refurbished Le Marais flats? Thank you, sir.
Minister.
Thank you, sir. The responsibility or delegated responsibility for Andium lies with the Assistant Treasury Minister, Deputy Lindsay Ash, as the Deputy will know. But as a St Clement Deputy, of course, I've taken a great interest in the redevelopment of Le Marais, and long overdue. And the people that I've met who live there love being there, and having been round Le Marais several times, it's fantastic accommodation, and I can understand why people like being there, which is why they don't want to move. But as regards the Deputy's question to the increase in rents, it was always such that if they stayed from what I remember, if they stayed within their apartments while the refurbishment was going on, there wouldn't be a rent increase. If they moved out because the refurbishment was too busy for them and then moved back in again, there would then be an increase. But I don't know what the agreed rental with Andium has been, if it has been agreed at all. Thank you.
Supplementary, sir?
Yes, Deputy.
Can I ask the Minister, who I believe still has overall responsibility as shareholder responsibility, does she believe that this is a fair system, particularly given the last answer, where if one decided not to move out during a major refurbishment, which I don't believe was possible, that your rents won't go up. But if you did move out, your rent will go up. Where on earth are we with the rents for these people who want to move back into much needed refurbished accommodation?
I did say to the Deputy that the refurbishment was much needed, but the residents, from what I understand, were given a choice. Depends on the degree of refurbishment that was required as to whether they moved out or moved back in again. But as I say, it's the Assistant Treasury Minister who has responsibility for Andium, so probably best left if Deputy Ward were to refer to him. Thank you.
Deputy St Martin.
Thank you, sir. Could the Minister please confirm that it is her and her department that will decide on any taxation levels that might be levied on our fledgling cannabis industry here in Jersey?
I think it's a joint decision, Deputy, from the Economic Development Minister, who has said very publicly that it would be 20%, which is the way that we are progressing that as to be fair across all businesses. Thank you.
Supplementary question, Deputy St Martin.
Thank you, sir. If she's made that decision, or the decision has jointly been made, does the Minister know what sort of tax receipts it's expecting?
Not entirely, but we are not expecting tax receipts until about 2024 because the tax will be on the profits. And from what I understand, the implementation of the cannabis growing scheme is incredibly expensive to initiate. And so it won't be until there are profits produced that they will be taxed, which I understand to be about 2024.
Senator Mezek.
Thank you, sir. Could I ask the Minister, as shareholder representative of the SOJDC, what direction, if any, has been given to them around the proposed South Hill development, and what proportion of homes for affordable housing, first-time buyers or sub-market rent have been put to the SOJDC?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. No, I'm afraid I can't answer that. I can answer the Deputy separately. Again, with the arm's length organisations or shareholder organisations, it is very much the delegated responsibility of Deputy Ash. But we're in the process of looking at it, and we'll get back to the Senator when we have some answers for him. Thank you.
Supplementary question, Senator?
Yes, please. Would the Minister agree that the arm's length bodies ought to be acting in such a way which is delivering on the strategic aims that our democratically elected government would set, including the delivery of affordable housing, and therefore it wouldn't be unreasonable to say to the SOJDC that when pursuing a development like this, we do not want them to be providing homes which will simply be used as investment assets rather than homes for the people who we represent?
Yes, the Senator and I have had a discussion about this before with relevance to the waterfront, not just South Hill. And certainly there is a way to go forward which accommodates affordable housing or first-time buyers housing and or both, but also first-time buyers. The SOJDC have to have a viable business to go forward, so it can't all be affordable housing, so it's got to be a mix of all of them. Thank you.
Deputy Higgins.
Yes, thank you, sir. It's another question to the Minister as the shareholder representative, this time for Jersey Post. Can the Minister justify, and also tell us, because she's had a briefing on it, but can she justify Jersey Post increasing the cost of parcels to the UK from the 1st of January by 6% and parcels to the rest of the world by 25%, which certainly would blow any hole in trying to help us keep inflation down?
The parcel post is really largely what makes Jersey Post viable, because obviously people are not doing letters and cards as they used to. I'm not aware of the 25% increase. I was aware of the 6% increase, but I think on the basis that there hasn't been an increase for quite a while is maybe why it's jumped that much. But I was not aware of a 25% increase. It'll be due to the market, not necessarily just Jersey to UK, from which you would have to pass through, but it'll be from what UK markets put onto our cost basis.
Supplementary, sir.
If there's time, yes, Deputy.
As the Minister doesn't know for sure, will she undertake to find out and come back and give the states and the island an answer explaining why those increases and how they're justified? Thank you.
Yes, of course I will, sir.
That brings the period for questions to this Minister to an end. We now have questions to the Minister for External Relations and Financial Services. First listed for a question is Deputy Higgins.
Thank you, sir. Could the Minister, again, following up my questions to the Environment Minister earlier, how is he going to try and deal with the expectations of the 200 French fishermen who will probably not get licenses and obviously won't be best pleased?
Minister.
Thank you, sir. And I thought the Deputy's question was excellent the first time he asked it, sir. Let's be clear. The Trade and Cooperation Agreement gives rights over historic fishing in our water and in French water, and it uses a term, nature and extent, and proof that's required. So there may be language around Jersey and elsewhere that thinks that we can avoid meeting the terms of that agreement, but we cannot. We have to, under the terms of the agreement, issue licenses to French fishermen who've got historic rights in our waters through the preceding 3 years. And that means there will be a good number of licenses issued. The challenge we've had is the data and the evidence. And we're going to need to work with the EU and now bilaterally with the French as well. We're going to need to be pragmatic. We're going to need to think about the spirit of the agreement as well as the letter of the agreement, because if we do not respect those historic rights, as the trade deal says we should, then this problem will not be solved. The Deputy is right to raise this as an issue, sir.
Supplementary question, Deputy Higgins?
Not at this point, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Senator Moore.
Thank you, sir. Could the Minister explain, please, why he prefers to negotiate with the French via the UK and not take up the offers of direct communications with our neighbours in Normandy and Brittany, please?
Well, let's be clear, I have been speaking with our neighbours in Normandy this last week, as you would expect, but it's not a matter of personal preference. It is prescribed as the institutional arrangements within the trade deal. And we have asked and put it to the EU that actually there should be a two-pronged approach. One is the institutional arrangements, which we think serve as well, because fishing, let's remember, is the responsibility of the EU and not individual member states. But the fact that we have relationships, and hitherto good relationships with Normandy, means that we need to keep that dialogue open on the detail rather than just the term. And I think it's that institutional arrangement where it said we must use those rather than talk about the detail to our Normandy colleagues is part of the problems arising and why we find ourselves where we are.
Supplementary question, Senator?
No, thank you at the moment. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Deputy Tadier?
Thank you, sir. When we talk about historic rights, how long will these historic rights last for into the future, and will they be transferable, for example, from father to son or from mother to daughter?
So quite simply, the terms of the agreement, I think, can be read in perpetuity and that they are transferable. The Deputy will recall from the legislation that the Environment Minister asked the Assembly to approve at the last sitting, that was the terms of the legislation. But let's remember, these historic rights, French fishers have been fishing in our waters for hundreds of years. The Bay of Granville Agreement was just the latest agreement about how they could fish. So the historic rights going forward, I think in perpetuity is the correct term, but into the future, are based on what those fishers have done over the last 3 years, or the best of the last 3 years, in effect, prior to the Brexit agreement.
Supplementary question, Deputy Tadier?
Yeah, thank you, sir. I mean, I'm a bit baffled because there are lots of historic rights and privileges that we all enjoy as British citizens that won't be continued after Brexit in other areas, but seemingly not when it comes to fishing. But my question is really about sustainability. What if those fishermen have enjoyed historical fishing in the last 3 years, but ultimately in an unsustainable way? And I think in particular of pelagic pair trawling, which has been happening by the French, which cannot be described as sustainable wherever it happens. Is that going to be allowed to continue? And if so, what's the point?
So this is the juxtaposition of respecting historic rights, but the trade agreement is also very clear, and the Environment Minister was very clear in his statement earlier, that Jersey waters, as prescribed in the trade deal, are to be managed in a sustainable manner for the future. But any sustainable conditions that might be brought forward in the future, which I know the Minister and the Assistant Minister are absolutely committed to, must be based on good scientific data and introduced in a non-discriminatory manner. So that is the point. Jersey can manage its own waters for the first time, and it can manage them in a non-discriminatory, sustainable way based on the best scientific evidence.
Deputy Morell.
Thank you, sir. Would the Minister, or is the Minister satisfied that the United Kingdom is acting in Jersey's best interests when it acts as a rapporteur in that chain of communication with ultimately with Normandy, is he satisfied that the United Kingdom is not acting in its own interests? For instance, last week we did have elections, and it could certainly be suggested that the gunboat headlines that appeared on an election day in the UK were in the interests of certain parties in the UK. So is he satisfied that Jersey's interests are being put ahead of any United Kingdom interests in that chain of communication? Thank you, sir.
The island and its government, because of its constitutional arrangement, continually has to face that challenge of ensuring that its interests are heard and properly represented, even where they diverge from the United Kingdom's around the globe. And that is why we have sought during this period, post the implementation deal around fishing, to build a bilateral relationship with the EU Commissioner on fishing. It is always something that we guard against, that the UK is not seeking its own interest, but ours. And I think the Deputy asked a question about legal advice to the Environment Minister earlier. Let us be clear. The Environment Minister acted on the Jersey legal advice. In this instance, of course, the UK legal advice agreed and confirmed the Jersey legal advice, as I would expect it to do. So I am satisfied that they are acting in our interest, but I believe that we're in a slightly different position from the United Kingdom, and that is the relationship that we have with Normandy and the historic nature of those fishers fishing in our water. We understand probably better than they do how we must give effect to those historic rights. There's no avoiding it.
Supplementary.
Supplementary, Deputy, yes.
I will ask a question that I asked of the Environment Minister. Does the External Relations Minister believe that Jersey has lost some of its autonomy in this area in terms of fishing as a result of the UK-EU TCA? Thank you, sir.
Oh no, it's taken some back, because for the first time it is the Environment Minister, as we saw a week ago on Friday, it can now issue licenses over its own water and issue conditions on those licenses, providing they are non-discriminatory and based on the best scientific evidence. The problems that we've faced, I think, are around the institutional arrangements for communicating what is happening directly with the EU and with our French neighbours. So we've gained some autonomy, but the way of communicating that and the institutional arrangements are currently hindering us being able to give licenses which respect those historic fishing rights.
Thank him for his answers.
The Conrad Harbison-Brillard.
Thank you, sir. I'm given to understand that the Normandy trader, whilst being allowed to discharge its oyster catch in St Malo today, was refused permission to land local shellfish on the basis of security risk. What would be the Minister's comment to that, please?
That of course, is my understanding as well, Conrad Harby, even though yesterday from Normandy, the official no landing notice was removed, and we're grateful to those who interceded on our behalf in that regard, and there were myriad that did. But the trader, whilst no official block, has had it informally suggested that, as the Conotab said, shouldn't happen. So we will, as we've been doing for the last 4 months, we will continue to pick those issues up, speak directly with Préfet Maritimes and the Harbour Authority to try and alleviate those ongoing concerns. Because this last week's crisis has also shown that access to waters and access to markets are intrinsically linked in the minds of our colleagues in France, as they are for our fishers as well.
Supplemental question, Conotab.
Thank you, sir. Given that there is a direct link between the extension of amnesties and the well-being and of our fishing fleet in Jersey, will the Minister confirm that amnesties won't be extended readily without consideration to the effects on our fishing fleet? Thank you, sir.
No, they won't, and that is why the Environment Minister, when asked by the European Union, it only extended the amnesty initially for smaller boats for whom evidence was more difficult to gather, and the larger boats with VMS amnesty ended at the end of April. What we now know from experience over the last week was that those vessels which have received licenses do need more time to gather further evidence on the extent and nature. But I come back to the central point. The trade agreement is clear. Historic fishing rights must be respected, and we must work with the EU, with the UK, and importantly with our French colleagues to make sure we are issuing licenses which respect those historic fishing rights. We have got to think strategically. We've got to think about the spirit of the agreement.
Deputy St Mary.
Thank you, sir. The TEC agreement provides for the creation of specialised or specialist committees. Is it the Minister's view that the EU delay in ratifying the TEC agreement has led to a delay in those committees being formed? And further, does he envisage that once the relevant committee is formed, that will be the forum through which future negotiations regarding our waters might be conducted?
The Deputy is absolutely right, sir. I think that the delay in ratification, therefore the delay in setting up the specialised committees where these technical issues should have been addressed, has fed into some of the issues that we faced. He's right, and going forward, when they're set up, they should be more resolvable.
Supplementary question, Deputy St Mary?
No, sir. Thank you.
I doubt at this time, but there may be time for your question, Deputy Ward.
Thank you, sir. It was a technical question. Given the reference to historic fishing rights, am I right in saying that like for like licenses, so if it was 10 days before, it'll be 10 days afterwards. If it was 365 days before, it was 365 days afterwards. Is that the correct interpretation? And I do have a supplementary if possible.
That won't be possible.
That's correct, sir, and they can in any one of the preceding 3 years, so they can pick the best year out of the 3.
I'm sorry, Deputy, the time has just expired. The next question can be asked, and there's no opportunity for a supplementary, I'm afraid. Very well. The next period of questions is to the Chief Minister. Does anyone have any questions for the Chief Minister? Deputy Ward.
Thank you, sir. I asked the Chief Minister, given the answer previously in this sitting regards the decision over Rouge Bouillon is not for the Infrastructure Minister to be making, can I ask the Chief Minister, in his opinion, who will make the final decision over the allocation of the Rouge Bouillon site to either the school or the fire and ambulance service? Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. In my opinion, it'll be very much dependent on the recommendations that come out through the report and review that we're expecting, that I referred to in my earlier answers. We're expecting in roughly 4 to 6 weeks' time. It's got to work its way up. It will then be fed through, sir, the relevant bodies I've previously referred to, including the Regeneration Steering Group, and ultimately, sir, up to the Council Ministers. And my expectation, sir, then it would be a decision and discussion at the Council Ministers, although I may have misheard the Minister's response, but I think he did suggest ultimately it might come back to the Assembly. I need just to check exactly what he had in mind, but at the very least, it would be a Council Minister's decision. But I do emphasise, sir, we need to take that decision in the round. And in other words, if for the sake of argument, one suggested that actually that site is appropriate for the extension to Rouge Bouillon, bear in mind its location next to a very large roundabout, that you do, before one does anything, have to secure a central site that is appropriate for life and safety, sir, in town for the fire and rescue service and any other blue light services that require housing, sir.
Supplementary question, Deputy?
Yes, please, sir. So my question really is not about the validity of the decision at this stage. It is the question of who is finally responsible for that decision. Perhaps I word it another way, sir. Who will take credit for that decision? Will it be the Chief Minister? Will it be a majority vote of the Council of Ministers? Will it be another minister? Or will it be a non-ministerial department that is not directly accountable to this Assembly? I hope that's clear, sir.
It will certainly not be a non-ministerial or external body or anything along those lines that's not accountable to the Assembly. My expectation, sir, as I said, is the final decision would be at Council Ministers, but it may well be that formality means that a minister may have to sign off, but my expectation so would be at Council Ministers.
Well, Deputy Hegra.
Thank you, sir. What review has been conducted in each parish in relation to local school facilities prior to the selection of sites for building new houses in the island's new Bridging Island plan? Thank you.
Minister.
Sir, I would have to say that would be very much a matter for the Environment Minister. We do emphasise the point that it is a Bridging Island plan, not the kind of full island plan. And as I said, sir, the review I've previously referred to is mainly in what I'll call the urban area of I've said St Helier, sir, but it may well extend outside the parish links of St Helier into the urban area of St Helier.
A supplemental question, Deputy Hegra?
Yes, sir. I was asking the question in relation to the hat he currently holds in relation to education. So therefore, I would have anticipated, as the Minister for Education, that he would have considered this looking at the Bridging Island plan. And that's what I'm asking, sir.
Sir, I did actually address that in one of my earlier answers in the Assembly this morning, on the basis, sir, that this is hopefully a temporary role I'm holding, sir.
Deputy Tadier.
Thank you, sir. So I wanted to ask a question that relates to the ongoing French situation. Is that in order, given general importance to all of the ministerial departments?
Yes, I don't think there's a difficulty with that. The Chief Minister cannot be asked a broad range of questions when he.
Thank you, sir.
In question time.
It relates to this idea about the non-discriminatory application of sustainable fishing or any other fishing conditions that we wish to apply. Is it the reality that if a condition is applied to a particular, what they call prosecution of a type of fishing, say pelagic trawling, which only the French do, that it's going to be hard to describe that as non-discriminatory in reality, because it will be affecting primarily one group of fishers above the other, which could then lead on to further reprisals. Does the Chief Minister have any thoughts about that particular issue down the line, when in reality we actually try to manage our waters and our fishing stocks?
No, I thank the Deputy for a very good question, sir. Probably it's like a bit of a challenging one. What I will say, sir, is that I'll go for a principle. On me, if it got into any more technical details, sir, I definitely want to revert to the legal and technical advice. But as a fundamental principle, if a condition is non-discriminatory, it's non-discriminatory. It still applies to, for the sake of argument, one fleet over another, even if that particular fleet at the present time doesn't do it, or doesn't do it in any great shape or form. If it's got to be a non-discriminatory measure, and I would also thought, sir, that this is where the conservation areas of our waters is going to be incredibly important for future generations, and that, as I understood, says, is one of the rationales behind some of the parts of the TECA agreement, sir.
Supplemental question, Deputy Teddy?
Yeah, I think so. I thank the Chief Minister for that answer. I guess we're getting into the realms of realpolitik here. So if for example, ministers decide that they want to ban a particular type of fishing, which, as I said, doesn't affect local fishers, but does affect the French, then what is to stop them, again, simply saying, we don't accept these conditions and we're going to cut off your electricity supply and not allow your fishermen to land their catches in Normandy or Brittany? Because at some point there has to be an ability for the might is right kind of arguments, or that they might use to be no longer acceptable, I suppose, is the point. So where does the Chief Minister see this going in reality rather than in theory?
So I'm going to be as diplomatic, I think, as I possibly can be on this one. There have been some fairly intemperate remarks made politically around this matter over the last few days, and I think certainly the expression disproportionate that has been used in the recent past about those comments still applies. We are a law-abiding jurisdiction. We follow the rule of law. The agreement of what we call the TECA sets out some very clear dispute resolution processes, and that should be what is followed. So therefore, sir, I think, for example, as is in the public domain, the closure of the Normandy ports was not within the terms of the TECA, and a complaint was made to the Commission, and that has been reversed. So, sir, I think that's got to be the stance that we expect on all sides, whether it's on our side or any other party, that we all follow the rule of law, that we try and de-escalate the situation, and then we go by that process. And ultimately, sir, the European Commission's reputation, I would suggest, does rely on having an even-handed, objective approach and ensuring that international commitments and agreements are adhered to by all parties.
Very much. So, Deputy Ash.
Thank you, sir. This morning we discussed, and I'm sure many people were dismayed in the island to hear of the offering that some of our primary schools now are able to produce, particularly that at Rouge Bouillon. Is the Chief Minister surprised that more was not done to raise this vital issue to the highest state of alert by the former Children's Minister, Senator Mezek?
I thank you. I thank the Deputy for that comment, sir. And I don't think I need to comment any further, sir.
Did you have a supplemental question, Deputy Ash?
I'm disappointed to hear the Chief Minister does not need to comment any further, sir, because to my mind, it should be, would he not agree that the former Children's Minister could have got together with the former Education Minister and raised this to the very highest level at the time, sir, and that they did not?
Sir, as ever, sir, I think the Deputy makes some very valid points, and I'm sure the relevant individuals that he refers to would love to discuss that in much further detail with him at some point, sir.
Senator Mezek.
Thank you, sir. I won't pass comment on that previous question. Could I ask the Chief Minister that, given the Environment Minister has lodged regulations for a landlord licensing scheme, albeit on slightly different terms to the one he's previously lodged, could the Chief Minister confirm that this time round it will have government support?
Sir, as ever, all these matters are matters for the individual ministers. Council ministers have not yet properly discussed it, and I'm sure the outcome will become evident as we get closer to the debate, sir.
Supplementary, sir, is it his position as Chief Minister that he thinks it's a good use of his minister's time to pursue bringing forward policies like this without any indication of whether the government's actually supportive of them or not? And would he not agree that stronger leadership would be to have much clearer direction to his ministers so time isn't wasted in the future?
Sir, I will not get drawn to comments about stronger leadership or not. The Centre will be aware that we've had a few other issues to deal with in the last 10 days, which has taken the attention of a number of ministers. And as I said, at the next Council of Ministers, I expect there to be a full and proper discussion around the matter.
Constable John?
The Chief Minister, in answer to an earlier question, said he hoped that the role of children education was a temporary role. Can you advise members when he hopes to make an appointment of a new minister, please?
Sir, as if I can refer the Constable St John to a written answer I have already given, sir, and that lays out the present state of play, sir.
Have a supplementary question to that, sir? Constable St Prahlad.
Thank you, sir. Further to my written question 190 of 2021 regarding residency, would the Chief Minister be prepared to consider a dual residency status from island residents, principally because many people seem to have residences not only in France but other countries and spend half the time here and half the time there? I'd be interested in the Chief Minister's views. Thank you, sir.
Minister.
Sir, I think with an accountant's hat on and a somewhat dim recollection of all the complicated rules around residency, sir, and I'm just peering at his the answer we gave him around on the written question 190, sir. I don't think I would give a comment on that off the hoof, because I do know that those areas are fraught with difficulties sometimes. And particularly if one looks at certain European jurisdictions, I know this is not the same, where effectively residency and European passports get linked, and it is definitely not a that as a practice is certainly diminishing, sir. So I think it's one of those I'd rather have a more detailed discussion with the Connétable. I'm very happy to have at some point, just to understand exactly where his thinking lies, sir.
Supplemental question, Connétable?
Yes, please, sir. And given the restrictions of travelling with linked to the COVID of late. Would he agree that many residents or several residents have had difficulty in complying with the residential qualifications needed to demonstrate that they are in fact residents in Jersey? Thank you, sir.
And sir, I think all I can do on that is refer back to the answer that's been given, where actually in exceptional circumstances, it is sometimes looked at on a case-by-case basis.
Well, there is no time for any further questions to the Chief Minister, and that brings the time allocated for questions without notice to an end. The next item of business is a statement on a matter of official responsibility from the Minister for International Development in relation to the Island Identity Project. Minister.
Thank you, sir. Over the past year, I've been privileged to lead on a piece of work entitled Island Identity, which explores the many different elements which define Jersey, which is a lot more difficult than it sounds. Together with a very able Policy Development Board, whom I would like to give enormous thanks to, we have produced a 200-page interim findings report. A strong and inclusive sense of island identity underpins many of the goals and themes prioritised in the Common Strategic Plan, which this Assembly unanimously approved in 2018. The work was split into 6 focus areas, which ranged from our constitution, communities to connectivity, and settled on 3 primary objectives, being people in Jersey are civically engaged and proud of their island. Jersey has a recognisable and positive international personality, and public policies coherently support and develop Jersey's distinct identity. These were narrowed down yet further with 7 specific goals and over 40 suggestions of what we considered to be opportunities to kickstart the project. This report sets out our thinking and will act as a reference point and delivery aid, and can be found on the Island Identity website, which we are launching today. Since then, the work has been summarised in an easy-to-read consultation document, which we have also published today, and will be available to stakeholders, schools, the parishes, businesses, organisations, and anyone who has an interest in the subject, which should be everyone, right? As this initiative now turns to you and asks, what does Jersey mean to you? To help us work towards the overarching objectives against which success can be ultimately measured, we put forward 2 simple sounding questions for consideration. What makes Jersey special and why does it matter? First, there is a profound and almost universally shared sense that what we have in Jersey is special and worth protecting. Yet also a widespread feeling that something is being lost. How can Jersey change with the times, embrace diversity, be a welcoming place for immigrants, play its part in an increasingly interconnected and homogeneous world, yet still preserve and nurture its uniqueness? I realise that questions of identity must be handled sensitively. We must take particular care that we are not defining some ideal of Jerseyness which alienates people with different views and backgrounds. Instead, I believe that discovering and celebrating what people themselves love about Jersey and value about the island can help provide common focal points for our growing and interestingly diverse population. Interestingly, nations which have a strong sense of national identity, Canada, Australia and New Zealand, are often amongst the best at integrating immigrant communities and giving them a sense of pride and belonging. Conversely, nations with weakened identities are now struggling with legacies of social fragmentation. How others see us matters too. Internationally, our long-term future relies on projecting a positive image of the island, richer international personality than just that of our world-class finance industry. Our unique history and constitutional status, and our extraordinary endeavours in other fields of culture, heritage, philanthropy, international development, sport, business, art, digital, agriculture, tourism and conservation. There are so many, and these should also be recognised and promoted as part of our personality. Coordinating and projecting these facets of our island identity will help us build the reputation and relationships we will depend on to thrive in a globalised world. Thirdly, by developing and enhancing Jersey's distinct identity and outbound facing profile, it will give us a framework to coherently set public policy in the future. And why is now the right moment to investigate these matters? Even before the events of last week, the why now question couldn't be more relevant and urgent as we, as an island, face the challenges of Brexit and big global issues like climate change, pandemic recovery, and huge technological advances changing the way we work. The time is right to position ourselves as a global citizen with much to offer. I also believe that during lockdown there has been a paradigm shift in our society. It has given us time for reflection, to better appreciate the importance of family, our community, the environment, our well-being, and all that we value. We have great opportunities to diversify and innovate, as other British nations have done, such as Scotland and Wales, with far fewer political and constitutional freedoms than we enjoy. Yet visitors to those places are confronted at every turn with proud expressions of who they are. Whether you grew up here, work here, or have chosen to make Jersey your home, this project is for you. The task has not been one to look backwards and attempt only to preserve our unique essence, but to shine a light on its many strands and look at the different ways they can be improved and woven together for the future. So join me and articulate what Jersey means to you, what it means to be part of this community, what makes us distinct, what should we value and defend, the principles that we should uphold as defining the best parts of Jersey and its people. In working together to shape our understanding of island identity and to enhance our international personality, we can be proud of our island and maintain it for future generations. The future is ours to shape, and while we might face uncertainty, I passionately believe that the topic of our island identity and international personality, what Jersey means to you and to others, the stories that you tell, where we are collectively and where we want to be, is a fundamentally optimistic and forward-looking one. And it is in that spirit of optimism that I say over to you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Minister. There is now a 15-minute period for questions. The first question, Deputy Tadier.
Thank you, sir. I'm glad to hear that Jersey is unique and special, just like every other place in the world. And the question I have for her is, the Minister, is does she believe that there's a risk when we try to anthropomorphize concepts of nationality and ultimately very abstract ideas when we start talking about personalities.
The term personality, I believe, was defined by the Lord Chancellor in 2007 when he visited Jersey and advised us of certain ways that we should be considering our international personality. And various terms were considered, and personality was the one that was felt that was most suited to what we were trying to portray.
Supplemental question, Deputy?
Yeah, does the Minister believe that there's a risk when we talk about in terms of personality, which is usually applied to individual psychology, that we get into the realms of, or potentially absurdity, but also we get into the realms of talking about multiple personalities and a schizophrenic society? Because is it not the case that we actually have so many different identities that people can identify with, so as to make the concept of talking about an island identity either highly risky or completely meaningless?
No, I don't agree with the Deputy. I believe that there are many facets to our personality. That doesn't necessarily mean that we are schizophrenic. It means that we have many talents, rather than, as I alluded to in my statement, rather than us just focusing on our international personality being that of a world-class finance centre. We have many other strands that we can draw on, and we should be promoting, so that we are known, rather than just a international finance centre, we are known for other things, the many other things, conservation, the work that Durrell are doing, for example, the work that Jersey Overseas Aid are doing in international development, transforming milk yields in Africa. No, I don't believe that makes us schizophrenic. I think it's a very good term. It means that we are multifaceted.
Senator Mezey.
Thank you, sir. And I'm following on from, I think, where Deputy Taddeo is trying to get to with his questions. Could I ask the Minister to outline what she thinks the challenges are going to be in trying to articulate any sort of unified definition of identity, when it's surely intrinsic that somebody's emotional relationship with their home is something that is ultimately deeply personal to them?
Of course it is going to be personal to them if it's their home, but it's to draw on what islanders feel are important in their islands, to draw on the assets that we have. I mean, it's taken as a given, and certainly in the Future Jersey document that went out to consultation, one of the best assets was our scenery, our lanes, our beaches. But we know as islanders we're made up of so much more than that. For example, during COVID and lockdown, the community came together and helped one another. You know, there were the community support teams, the task force, etc. So as a community, I think that is probably one of our greatest intangible assets, which are very difficult to describe, but nonetheless make up who we are. And I'm not pretending that there won't be barriers, but that's what we'd like to hear. If people don't feel included in the community, we want to hear what those barriers are.
Supplemental question, Senator?
Yes, please. Does she accept that there is a serious risk in trying to define the island's identity and ending up focusing on things that actually there simply isn't unanimity out there in the public, and end up actually risking alienating those people from what is prescribed as our island's identity. And just if I could just use a couple of examples to demonstrate what I mean by that. I mean, for example, our government system. Some people may say that's something to be proud of. Some people who are just as Jersey and just as proud and caring of their island may say the opposite of that. And does she accept that there are risks, even in the documentation that's been published so far, which refer to Jersey as a country, which is something that there are thousands of people out there in our island who actually consider that notion to be a bit ridiculous and embarrassing. And that doesn't mean they're less proud of their island home. They just don't consider the terminology that's been prescribed to be accurate. Does she accept that those are risks, and what will she do to overcome them?
Yes, obviously, if you sort of raise your head above the parapets, there are risks with everything, aren't there? The report, the longer report, explains quite well why we suggested certain terms for describing our island. National identity was one of them. A small island, a small country, small national country. I mean, there are all different ways, but I think you come together and you discuss it. And as I said, some of the countries who have the strongest personalities, international personalities, are those that are the most inclusive. It's countries that have been sort of shied away from tackling these issues, find themselves with social fragmentation.
Deputy Morell.
Thank you, sir. I mean, sorry, there's been talk of Jersey's assets, and surely the assets with the most potential value in Jersey are our young people. And it strikes me that any young person who thinks about a career in public policy today would look at the government of Jersey, outside of the political aspect of the government of Jersey, would look at the Directors General and would look at the CEO positions and would see people, none of whom are born in Jersey. So in that sense, isn't it the case that no matter what work we do in terms of drawing up papers called island identity, it's the government itself removes confidence from our own young people because they cannot see themselves working at the top levels of our government. And so in that sense, doesn't the government undermine Jersey's own island identity? Thank you, sir.
It's a point very well raised, and in actual fact we recognised this in the report. The report is not a promotional report, it's a very fact-finding, considered report, I would say. Yes, and the Deputy makes a very good point, and one of the opportunities, if you like, one of the suggestions that we made was that consideration be given to a talent programme within the civil servants, within the civil service. For example, if young people do want to enter the civil service and they're given opportunities at the careers fairs and stuff like that, and talented ones are put on a fast track programme. They have fast track programmes, I believe, in the UK, and felt that there should be something similar here. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is another of our opportunities, suggestions, is that schools enhance their teaching programme about our island, about how it works, about the political system. And already we've got the Youth Parliament, we've got the Youth Assembly. I know the GREF does a huge job of work with the year 5s and 6 in primary school, but we believe that there is a lot more yet to be done, and certainly teaching in schools about our island, how it runs, not only in schools, I have to say, teaching adults, teaching frontline workers, teaching people within the civil service how our island works, how the political system works. Yeah, I think the key to much of what we're suggesting is education.
Supplemental question, Deputy Morrell.
Thank you, sir. And I thank the Minister for the report. It is certainly interesting, and I appreciate a lot of work has gone into that. Is the Minister able to confirm reports that I heard that senior civil servants pushed back at some aspects of this report when they were first presented with the draft, in pushing back specifically in terms of referencing the anglicisation of the island, in terms of bringing a UK culture to the island when the island has always proudly not been a part of the UK. Is the Minister able to confirm those reports? Were they correct? And did she indeed meet such resistance from civil servants? Thank you, sir.
Personally, I didn't. I wasn't at that meeting, but I believe there was a heated discussion over the report and some of the uses of our terminology, and the Deputy is quite right. I think there was exceptions made when we did use the word anglicisation. We continue to use it because we felt the way it was used was fair, because we were talking about sometimes we look to the UK for our solutions, which sometimes are ill-fitted to the Jersey context, and we should be perhaps looking elsewhere for solutions sometimes. So we felt there to say that there was increasing anglicisation was a fair comment, so it continues to be in the report.
Thank you, Minister, for answers.
Senator Valwa.
Yes, thank you, sir. Minister, could you advise if you've presented the Jersey Identity Report to the Curriculum Council and the expectations for the Curriculum Council to carry out much of what you've talked about with regards to education?
There are discussions going on, but obviously my first port of call was to the States Assembly to present the reports here after they had been to the Council of Ministers, but we have plans afoot to go and speak to the Curriculum Council.
Supplementary question, Senator Valwa?
No, thank you, sir.
Senator Mezek, second question.
Thank you, sir. In the documentation that I've seen on the website, there's a reference to the board behind this report having concluded that it's appropriate to describe Jersey as a country and a place with citizens. Given that both of those things are contestable and contesting them is not a sign of any sort of unpatriotic view of the pride to be from Jersey, could the Minister say whether that was a unanimous description that the board arrived at, and does she understand why people may contest those descriptions and look at that sort of documentation and say, well, this exercise isn't for me, if those are the conclusions they're reaching?
We had various discussions about the terminology and calling the report a national identity, which many would argue that we are a small nation state. But when choosing the title, we felt actually that might put some people off. This particular exercise is a consultation exercise, so that's the last thing we wanted to do. But if the Senator would like to read the bigger report, the 200-pager, which I don't know if he looked at that on the website. It's the website only went up today, so I forgive him if he didn't. we discuss the various terms, and it's up for discussion. Nothing is written in stone. We would like to hear from you. This is the whole purpose of issuing the consultation document, so people can engage with us. There's going to be a series of meetings. We're engaging with the Jersey Policy Forum, who will hopefully take it and put together a group of people to discuss various things. I mean, there's a saying, you're never going to please everybody all of the time, but if we can have some coherent discussions, then I'm sure the Senator could be privy, and we're
happy
happy
to ask you to bring your answer to a close, so Minister. We're out of time, I'm afraid.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much indeed.
So is it possible to extend question time? Is there a provision for that?
No, there is no basic provision for extension of question time. It was already considered by the Assembly quite recently, as you will recall, Deputy, with the addition of the question period. Sorry, I beg your pardon. Calling it question time, I'm afraid, set me off a hair running. Yes, it is possible to extend this period of questioning by 15 minutes if the Assembly agreed. Do you make that proposition?
Yes, so it's a statement, isn't it? That's why not, is because not.
You're absolutely right. It's a statement, and although there's a 15-minute provision afterwards, that can be extended if members wish for a further 15 minutes. So do you make that proposition?
Yes, sir.
Is that seconded?
Yes, sir.
Does any member wish this to be put to the vote or to speak on it? Proposition to have an extra 15 minutes. I'll take it on a standing vote then. If anyone wishes a vote to be formally put on this, would they indicate so in the chat? Otherwise, I'll take it as an affirmation on standing vote. Very well, I accept that the proposition has been adopted. There's a further 15 minutes. The next person to speak, you have a supplemental question, Senator Mezek.
Yes, thank you, sir. I've got the website up in front of me, and the line I can see says, the board concluded that Jersey is accurately described as a country. Could the Minister confirm whether the board unanimously arrived at that conclusion?
Minister.
I can't confirm without looking back at the minutes. No.
Well, Deputy Higgins, you've indicated a question to the Attorney General. There's no facility for asking a question to the Attorney General during any question period, unless it's a question, of course, to the Attorney General, if you'll take the point. I'm afraid there's no ability for the Attorney General to be advised on a question period to a minister.
So again, it's not a question period, it's a statement from the Minister.
Well, nonetheless, this is a question period following from a statement from the Minister. The usual rules for asking questions obtain, and there is no ability for the Attorney General to advise, particularly in the light of the fact nothing is to be put to the vote. So,
very well. In that case, can I ask a question of the Minister?
Well, in due turn, yes. Deputy Ward is the next on the list to ask a question, but would you like me to put you down as a questioner, Deputy Higgins?
Yes, please.
Very well. Deputy Ward.
Thank you, sir. And I thought long and hard as to whether to ask a question. But I do find this as an intriguing process that is being gone through. I'd like to ask the Minister regards any concerns she may have over discussions of national identity. And I refer to a quote by there's a structuralist philosopher called Umberto Eco, and structuralism looks for the unifying properties across everyone. And he said that national identity is the last bastion of the dispossessed, but the meaning of identity is now based on hatred for those who are not the same. And I think whenever there are discussions around this area, we can so easily lapse into those other than discussions. And can I ask the Minister just to reassure, to encourage people to be involved, that we are going to be very sensitive to that, and everyone's opinion is equally valid in this discussion. Thank you, sir.
Of course it is. This is the whole point of going through consultation. Otherwise, we could have just produced a report. We would like to see it discussed in schools, at parishes. I'm really hoping the constables will take the reports, hold parish assemblies, discuss it amongst their parishioners. Yes, it is for everybody, and certainly if islanders feel that there are barriers to inclusion in the islands, then those are the people we especially want to hear from. And going back to terminology, I've just got a note here that a nation is described in the Oxford Dictionary as an aggregate of people so closely associated with each other by factors such as common descent, language, culture, history, occupation of the same territory has been identified as a distinct people. So it's, I think the word nation might conjure up different things in different people's minds. Isle of Man, for example, who've been very good at advancing and promoting their own identity. They have things like a national gallery, as does Bermuda, and they're small island states, just as we are. They don't shy away from the use of words such as that.
Supplemental question, Deputy Ward?
Just to say, sir,
well,
I'm pleased that
is it a question? Because it
is a question. Yes. I'm pleased to hear that inclusivity is there and that range is there. But just to ask the Minister, just to ensure that she is aware that whenever one talks about nationality, you are in an area that can very quickly go into other more sinister areas. Perhaps I don't know what the word is, but this needs to be a positive experience. Would the Minister agree that this needs to be a positive experience for all involved and not make anyone feel left out? So.
Absolutely, and I think I made it clear in my statement that we're aware of the sensitivities involved when you try to define a place of people. But the whole point is, if we could have some focal points of what Jersey means to people, and promote those so that we can all have something, and a strong, as again I said in my statement, a strong island identity, a strong identity, international profile can give people, newcomers, a better sense of belonging because they've got something to sort of feel a part of.
Well, Deputy Higgins.
Thank you, sir. And I'm not trying to be awkward on this. It's just, can the Minister, by the way, I agree with what she's trying to achieve. I think it's good we have our identity and so on. It's just a question of legality. And in international law, would Jersey constitute to be a nation? And I'm not convinced of that question. Can I ask the Minister if she has consulted with the Attorney General or the Law Officers Department on the use of that term?
Not those people in particular, but we have spoken to various lawyers about it. Indeed, we've got a lawyer on the board as a board member.
Supplemental question, Deputy Higgins?
No, I'm still thinking about it. Thank you, sir.
Right, Senator Ferguson.
Thank you, sir. During the various discussions preparing the various reports so far, has there been any comment about the fact that very often we ignore suggestions and solutions offered by local residents and always insist on going to the UK? You know, if you can, one way of making newcomers feel part of the community, you know, if they offer good suggestions or assistance, they're just ignored. How are you going to approach that sort of attitude?
I'm not entirely sure the question. so newcomers are making suggestions.
Well, it's not, sorry, it's not just newcomers, but any ideas that sort of emanate from within the island seem to be ignored in preference to following ideas from anywhere else. There's no sort of attempt to include people so that they feel part of the community, part of the identity.
What is the question, Senator?
I said, was there any discussion about it?
Well, I'm not sure discuss at the end of a statement is a question directed. The Minister must be asked what action is going to be taken, or for information. That's the normal format for questions. And I'm just wondering.
Thank you, sir. That's very helpful. Yes, what the Minister was talking about fast-track graduate schemes for the civil service, which I agree with. You know, what's she going to do about, or what are her suggestions for dealing with this, you know, a prophet is without honour except in, prophet is seldom without honour save in his own country. And we've got quite a lot of that going on too. We have a number of people who come and live here. We have local residents. They have suggestions and they're ignored or just sort of patted on the head and said, you know, that's very helpful, thank you, go away. Right. How is the Minister going to deal with that approach?
Well, obviously, the Senator is looking backwards at the past. This is, I hope, an optimistic and forward-looking document. Suggestions will be taken on board, but clearly I can't make comment. It depends what they are and how much they cost and a whole raft of other things. I really can't make a specific comment about a hypothetical situation.
Maybe I better contact the deputy and discuss it with her, because I do know.
Yes, I was going to offer you a supplementary question, if there is a supplementary question, Senator.
Well, can I come and have a word with you, Deputy of Groove Hill?
Yes, of course you can.
Very well. Second question for Deputy Taddy.
Thank you, sir. I am here.
Yes.
There's first of all, what languages is the current document and consultation questions available in? What languages?
English.
Okay, so we have a statement that that we've become increasingly anglicised, yet the documents are only available in English. How is that supposed to engage with the 50% of people who weren't born in Jersey and potentially have a language barrier?
Well, we speak English here, so that is how we engage with the majority of people on the island. If there is an issue that people require the documents to be translated, then we will see about translating them. I mean, I mean, the headings are in Gerrier, and the documents which were released today are available in the language that the majority of us speak.
Supplementary question, Deputy? Deputy Taddy?
Thank you, sir. I thought I'd had my two questions, sir. That's I didn't want to take up an extra one, but I can.
There's no one else listed to speak, and we've got about a minute left, I think. So,
I mean, I think it's important that if we want to have a proper consultation here and genuinely hear from people who are important parts of Jersey, not just economy, but the island life. We need to hear from people who are not the usual voices. So presumably it's government policy when doing a consultation of this sort is to at least have the major languages, which are Portuguese and Polish included. Would the Minister give an undertaking to look at that, please?
I most certainly will. And one of the pieces of work we're going to do is speak and meet with the consuls of the various people that are over here and see how we can better engage with their particular communities and what we can do reciprocally to help one another, because this was one of the issues that was highlighted during lockdown and on the community task force. It was one thing that we did discover. It was quite difficult to get messages out to certain of the communities. So one of the recommendations is to engage with the consuls over here, so we can sort of reach out to them, reach out to their particular communities and find out what the barriers are, and if they require that the document translated, then we will consider that. Yes, very much.
Well, thank you very much, Minister. That brings the extended question period to the Minister to an end, and that ends the statements on the matter of official responsibility. Thank you very much. The Assembly now moves on to public business. First item is the draft States of Jersey Police Force Amendment number 3 law, P10, lodged by the Minister for Home Affairs. And for the purpose of today's debate, the main respondent is the Chair of the Education and Home Affairs Scrutiny Panel. I ask the greffier, therefore, to read the citation.
Draft States of Jersey Police Force Amendment number 3 law, 2000, a law to amend the States of Jersey Police Force law, 2012. The states, subject to the sanction of Her Most Excellent Majesty and Council, have adopted the following law.
Deputy Guido, I understand you are acting as rapporteur in this case?
Yes, sir.
Very well. Deputy Guido.
Sir, first, I hope that the Assembly will join me in wishing Constable Len Norman a prompt recovery. He was very keen to present this proposition to the Assembly, and I am sorry to have taken that from him. This draft, States of Jersey Police Force Amendment number 3 law, is part of an ongoing project to modernize our criminal justice legislation and streamline the administration and supervision of the States of Jersey Police Force. The amendments are intended to realign the governance, powers and duties of the Minister, the Police Authority and the Chief Officer, change the membership of the Police Authority, require a regular inspection of the state's police force, and expand the scopes of the annual policing plan. I would also like to thank the Children, Education and Home Affairs Scrutiny Panel, as well as Deputy Wickenden, who have taken an active interest in this important piece of legislation. To start with an overview of the current situation, the States of Jersey Police Force, like the police forces of most Western jurisdictions, is independent from government, and safeguards are in place to ensure that operational policing is not subject to political involvement. However, the police are responsible to the public for the delivery of efficient and effective policing services. And in order to hold the force accountable to the public, there must be some connection to the democratic process. Legislative and administrative arrangements to balance oversight with independence differ between jurisdictions. To reflect the unique nature of policing and the different cultural role of policing in each country and the resources available. In the United Kingdom, for instance, a corporate body such as a police authority or an individual police and crime commissioner provides that independence by sitting between government and the police force. In Jersey, following the initial move towards improved operation independence in 2012, considerable effort has been invested into balancing independence with accountability for the States of Jersey Police. In order to do so, various functions are split between the Chief of Police, the Police Authority, the Minister for Home Affairs, and the State's Employment Board, or SEB. Under the current arrangements, the Chief of Police has command, direction, and control of the States of Jersey Police, as well as responsibility for its general administration and proper financial management. The Police Authority has limited powers over the Chief of Police and a reporting line to the Minister, and the SEB is responsible for the arrangements for pay and conditions for police officers. In 2018, the Controller and Auditor General published a review of the governance of the States of Jersey Police Force, which made a number of recommendations for improvement to the governance arrangement. This amendment is intended to introduce those improvements that can be achieved by changes to the 2012 law. Amongst the issues identified were that the Jersey Police Authority has less resources than comparable bodies in larger jurisdictions and is dependent upon the information provided by the Chief of Police. Unlike the United Kingdom and Ireland, it does not have access to routine inspection reports. While the Minister is empowered to direct the authority to secure an inspection, this requires additional funding, which must be identified on a case-by-case basis. The amendments will require routine and regular independent inspections of the States of Jersey Police Force in order to appraise its performance and drive service improvements. The requirement that the police authority be responsible for ensuring the delivery of an efficient and effective States of Jersey Police Force as one of its statutory duties also presented an issue, as that duty would require a role and resources that the JPA simply does not have. It would also mean an inefficient duplication of the management structure. This responsibility will now rest with the Chief Officer, which is overseen by the JPA, and the authority will instead be responsible for ensuring that the force remains modern and is continuously improving. In addition, subject to the amendment to be debated today, the law would reform the membership of the police authority to ensure its clear independence from the political process. The CNAG identified that the powers of the Home Affairs ministers are more extensive than in other jurisdictions. For example, the minister now determines the number of each junior rank that may be appointed, which is clearly an operational matter. The minister may also require the authority to report to them any matter concerning the States of Jersey Police. Further, there is also no requirement for the minister to consult with the Chief of Police on the appointment of a Deputy Chief of Police. The minister can also, in certain circumstances, overrule the Chief on some human resources matters. All of these issues are addressed by the amendment, with the involvement of the minister in human resources issues being limited only to the Chief and Deputy, and ministerial powers of direction over the JPA removed. The annual policing plan will also be considerably improved. This is an important product as it describes to the public and members of the Assembly where the policing priorities will be, and effectively what taxpayer monies will be used for. It will be significantly enhanced from its current role as a one-year statement of planned activity to a broader plan that not only identifies the policing priorities, but also clearly articulates the resources that the force will require. It will take the form of a four-year rolling plan in order to align the policing arrangements to the four-year government plan. This legislation has been the subject of considerable consultation and has been repeatedly revised in light of the input from the States of Jersey Police and the Police Authority. They were members of an implementation group established in April 2019 to take forward the CNAG recommendations, on which Justice and Home Affairs Strategic Policy were also represented. I commend the principles to the Assembly.
Are the principles seconded?
Yes, sir.
Does any member wish to speak on the principles? I beg your pardon, Deputy Higgins has a point of clarification that you wish to ask of the rapporteur. Deputy?
Yes, thank you. The rapporteur mentioned that the Jersey Police Force is under-resourced relative to other forces, but hasn't put forward an argument to support that. And of course, didn't mention that the Criminal Offences Confiscation Fund, actually,
well,
it can be...
I'm sorry, well, can I ask, I have to ask you, what is the point of clarification you're seeking? These are points to be raised in a speech so far, Deputy, not points asking for clarification from the Minister.
Okay, the clarification then, sir, is how can he support that particular statement?
Can you clarify that particular statement, Minister?
Sorry, it is a point of clarification because I did not say that the police was under-resourced, but the Jersey Police Authority has been found to be under-resourced.
Thank you. That's much clearer. Thank you.
Very much indeed. Does any member wish to speak on the principles? If no member wishes to speak on the principles, Deputy Ward.
Thank you, sir. I am more prepared to regards the amendments because I thought we would be debating the amendments, but I suppose that's been when the regulations come up. Okay. So I just want to point out a few. I would like to point members of the Assembly to the comments paper that was produced by the panel, and I do so not simply because it is important for this debate, but also to point out the significant work that went into this report from officers and to also thank the Minister for delaying this debate by one sitting in order that we may undertake some work on this piece of these changes. We were very appreciative of the briefing arranged by the Minister and the draft law on the draft law prior to the lodging, and that really did help us do our work and raise some very good questions which I think were responded to, and I'm pleased to see that that's happening, that relation with scrutiny is there. We undertook scrutiny of this and were pleased to get submissions from the CNAG and the Jersey Police Authority, amongst others, and it is in response to the Comptroller and Auditor General's report that these changes in part arise. I would suggest that it is important that we seriously consider the amendments that have been brought because I think they adequately address CNAG's reports, but we'll come on to that debate later when we talk about those specifically. The panel does highlight, and I want to take this part of the report because one, it's right at the end of the rather long report, so I'm not saying that members won't get to it, but I'll just highlight it. The panel highlights the reliance of a successful implementation of the revisions to the operational framework of the Jersey Police Authority on delivering the desired improvement regarding the governance and accountability of the States of Jersey Police. I'd like to highlight that point. This is about governance and accountability of the police via the Jersey Police Authority. We would also like to point out that the importance of inspections at regular intervals we have highlighted, the importance of adequate resourcing in order for the Jersey Police Authority to undertake its functions is vitally important. And that there is, we want to ensure that the Jersey Police Authority has an active role in advising on the States of Jersey Police budget, because it will have the oversight of the workings of the States of Jersey Police. And perhaps the phrase is it will be and perhaps I've got a scrutiny sort of mind on when I say this, a critical friend to the police, but that criticism in its truest sense. We thank the CNAG for the report that was produced because it did really drive change, and it drove these amendments to the current law. I would urge members to look very carefully at the wording of that, because there are some particular words such as review and, which I think is very important, which is why the panel brings the amendments that it does. And these amendments are based on evidence it received, and it believes, and we believe they will further strengthen the draft law. So therefore, with that in mind, sir, I think that's all I will say on the main law, and I'll let others speak. It's interesting to see what people think so far. Thank you, sir.
Very much, Deputy. Deputy Wickenden.
Thank you, sir. I think first, if you can let me indulge, I'd also like to wish the Constable of St Clements a speedy recovery and good health. I think that the changes in the most, obviously I have an amendment to this draft law, really are giving a better position of strength in and certainty to how our police force works, how it's resourced in places like the Jersey Police Authority that I've been on for over 6 years now. Which I will speak to later during my amendment. But I do commend the majority of what's going on here and how it will really strengthen and enhance the way that our police is run and the laws that they managed by. So I just wanted to say that I think that the scrutiny panel's report was very good. It was long, but it was excellent, and I want to thank them, and I want to thank them for inviting me in to talk to them as well. It was very much appreciated. So I do commend that the principles of this are right regarding my proposition or my amendment to it. I will speak to that later. Thank you, sir.
Very much, Deputy St Mary.
Thanks, sir. Yes, just following on from the comments made by Deputy Wickenden. For those members that don't know, I am the other States member on the Police Authority, and I think it's fair to say that the proposals have been discussed in some depth by the authority, and on the whole, the authority is very much in favour of them. Again, sir, I have views on both the amendment proposed by Deputy Wickenden and the scrutiny panel, and I will reserve further comments until then, sir. But I just wish to know that the JPA in particular were generally supportive of these proposals. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Deputy. Does any other member wish to speak on the principles? No other member wishes to speak on the principles? And I close the debate and call upon Deputy Guida to respond.
Sir, I would also like to thank scrutiny. Constable Norman is always extremely keen to have scrutiny accompany the development of our laws rather than have a look at them at the very last minute. So it was a very collaborative task, and we're extremely thankful for their input and the additional amendments that they have brought today. The JPA will have an active role on the budget of the police, and it cannot be put in the amendment, but we're already requesting additional resources for them so that they can do their job properly. Looking at that, the rest of the questions actually will be probably better answered when we get to Articles 4 and 10, which are the subjects of the amendment, the scrutiny panel. So I'd just like to conclude. We have an opportunity today to approve the principles of a law that will realign the governance and powers of the Minister, the States of Jersey Police and the Police Authority in line with the recommendations made by the CNAG. This law will introduce formal regulated inspections and promote accountability and independence for the police, and will refocus the allocation of responsibility by reassigning various functions between the Police Authority, the States of Jersey Police and the Minister. The policing plan will consider not only the next year, but the 3 following years in more general terms to be more aligned with the government plan. Human resources arrangement will be the responsibility of the Chief Officer of Police, including numbers and ranks of officers. The Chief will also be formally consulted on the appointment of any deputy or acting deputy chief and the development of the policing plan. These changes will serve to future-proof the governance and accountability of our police service for the benefit of all islanders, and I would appeal to members to approve this draft law. And I call for the apple, sir.
As called for, in a moment, the greffier will add a vote into the chat channel. Vote is now open, and I ask members to cast their votes. Members have had the opportunity of casting their votes. I ask the greffier to close the voting. The principles have been adopted, 39 votes pour, no votes contre, no abstention in the link, and a further 6 votes pour in the chat. Very well. Does your panel, Deputy Ward, wish to scrutinise the matter?
No, sir, we've already done that. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. We come to second reading. Minister, how do you wish to propose the articles? There are 13 in all, as you rightly pointed out. There's a proposed amendments to Article 4 and to Articles 10. Do you are proposing to accept any of the amendments?
Sir, well, we will need to take the articles in different blocks, and there is a very, very small technical problem with Article 4, as the first amendment to Article 4 actually cancels it. So it stops existing for the first amendment of the second, sorry, the first paragraph of the second amendment. If possible, I would like the first amendment to Article 4 to run, and even if it succeeds, then the scrutiny amendment to the same article, even if it doesn't exist at that point, should run and actually reinstates it.
No, I'm afraid I don't think that works technically, Deputy. I mean, if the Assembly has voted that there should be no article, then the Assembly's already decided there should be no article. Members will, of course, look at both of the potential amendments and will have made the decision if they think the scrutiny amendment is the better amendment, not to vote in favour of Deputy Wickendon's and to vote for the scrutiny. If they take the view there should not be an Article 4, then they'll vote for Deputy Wickendon's. But I don't think we can ask the Assembly to take 2 entirely contrary votes back to back. I don't think that works as a matter of process. So I think we put the First Amendment first. If the Article 4 therefore is removed by the First Amendment, that means members will not have found favour with the scrutiny amendment as it is written, and Article 4 will cease to exist, and then that paragraph of the scrutiny amendment will fall away. That, I think, must be the inevitable consequence of the procedure.
Very well, sir.
Very well.
Also, sorry, the scrutiny amendment has 2 parts, and
yes.
The second part relates to Article 10. So, of course, we would like to be able to vote on that second part separately.
Indeed. So the right thing, I suppose, to do, Deputy Guido, is to take Articles 1 to 3 first, and then we'll deal with Article 4 and the amendments, and then the other articles up to Article 9, and then we'll deal with Article 10. Is that the best way to do it? Very well. So do you propose Articles 1 to 3?
I do, sir.
Do you wish to speak to them, or would you wish to simply to take questions?
Just take questions if there are any, sir.
Are Articles 1 to 3 seconded?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Does any member wish to speak on Articles 1, 2 or 3? No member wishes to speak on Articles 1, 2 and 3. Then I close any debate and I ask the greffier to put a vote on those articles into the chat. And I ask the greffier to open the voting and members to cast their votes. Members have had the opportunity of casting their votes. Then I ask the greffier to close the voting. Articles 1 to 3 have been adopted in second reading, 42 votes pour, no votes contre, no abstention in the link, and a further 3 votes noted pour in the chat. Do you move Article 4, Deputy Guida?
Sorry, yes, sir, I would like to speak on Article 4.
So you move Article 4, yes, it's open to you to speak on Article 4.
Article 4 reflects the CNAG Recommendation 3 and would prevent members of the States Assembly from also being members of the police authority. This would match the position in Scotland and Ireland and reinforce the operational independence of the police force. This is seen as the preferable course of action to fully insulate the JPA and thus the force itself from political interference. However, we do recognize that this is not universally the case, and indeed, in England and Wales, oversight falls to elected mayors or police and crime commissioners, where many do represent political party and campaign for political office explicitly on that basis. Basically, after discussing a lot on the subject, we have determined that this was a political decision to be taken by the Assembly. We feel that there are two sides to this issue, where this is actually what is sought is, absence of interference from the ministry, but not necessarily from the political process, and certainly not from the Assembly. So we will leave this decision to the Assembly.
Well,
with this, I propose Article 4.
Is Article 4 seconded?
Yes, sir.
There is a proposed amendment from Deputy Wickinton, and I ask the greffier to read the amendment.
So, sorry, before you do that, I had some clarification. So I think it's very important to know, because this is a bit of a surprise, that if this is accepted, then the amendment from the panel falls away. I thought it was in addition to add a review.
But it can only be to add a review to article in the terms of Article 4, and Article 4 will no longer exist. If the Assembly has voted to remove Article 4, it's gone. There is nothing, therefore, to amend in it. If that assists, Deputy Ward. Very well. Greffier, if you would read the amendment.
Page 16, Article 4. Delete Article 4 and renumber the subsequent articles accordingly.
Deputy Wickinton.
Thank you, sir. I think getting to a point of having a police authority in Jersey was a long battle, I guess. It started, sir, back on 31st of January 1995, when the states adopted a position of the then Defence Committee, P94 1994, Policing Systems in Jersey, Independent Review. P94 charged then Defence Committee to commission a full and thorough independent review of the policing systems in Jersey. The independent review, called Clothier 1, Police Service in Jersey, was on the 23rd of July 1996 and gave the first suggestion to create a police authority in Jersey, which was 24 years ago. The review body was constituted under the chairmanship of Sir Cecil Clothier, KCB QC. On the 19th of May 1998, 3 years later, the Defence Committee lodged P49, which asked the Assembly to agree in Article 2 that the Constitutional Police Authority should be as followed: that there be an independent chair appointed by the states on the recommendation of the Defence Committee, that 2 members of the Defence Committee, not being constables, be appointed by that committee, that 2 constables appointed by the Committee to Conotabs, and 2 independent persons appointed by the states on the recommendation of the Defence Committee following open selection procedure. And I say this because where we were at the starting point of the police authority, there was always to be a level of oversight at a political level. Unfortunately, nothing happened from 1998 until the 2nd of March 2010, when the then Senator Alan Brecon lodged P23 2010, which asked the states to decide to refer to their act on the 19th of May 1998, approving by law the establishment of a police authority. and to request the Minister for Home Affairs to present to the States for approval no later than December 2010, that year, proposals for the establishment of an independent police authority. It was on the 21st of December 2010 that the then Minister for Home Affairs lodged P192/2010, Jersey Police Authority Establishment, which was unanimously approved by the Assembly and mostly sets out the law's requirements and constitution that the police authority have been working to up to this day. The then Minister for Home Affairs, when proposing, said regarding the constitution of the Jersey Police Authority, paragraph 14 sets out the makeup of the authority. Now, this isn't the issue of trying to balance it not being too strong and not being too weak. And the idea which we have come up with is basically, firstly, that the chairman would be appointed by the minister after an appropriate selection process. So there would be a degree of independence of selection process with the final decision with the minister. 2 members would be appointed by the states, and that adds weight to the authority. But I must emphasise, for this to work properly, the members who were appointed by the states will have to understand that the role of the authority, if it is to work properly, should be non-political. I mean non-political in the sense of the left and right and so on. The job is to ensure that the police are operating efficiently, and indeed that has been the key principle in relation to the operation of police authorities in the UK, that general acceptance. Then there would be 4 other members appointed by the minister and the chairman, again following the appropriate selection process. Importantly, P192 was based on a Gibraltar model, the template provided by the Gibraltar Ordinance for the establishment of a police authority in small jurisdictions. They chose the Gibraltar model rather than looking at UK comparisons as a small jurisdiction. Then on the 22nd of March 2018, the then Controller General published the report, Governance of the States of Jersey Police. Within the report, the CNAG made the following analysis. I also note that the practice of the States Assembly electing members of the police authority from among its own membership is inconsistent with the practice of both Scotland and Ireland. Indeed, to reinforce the operational independence of the police service, there is a statutory prohibition on serving members of the legislature sitting on Scottish police authorities and Irish police authorities respectively. Now, Deputy Guida mentioned earlier that they do have elected representatives in the form of commissioners and mayors. And the report from the CNAG made the following recommendations: to review whether it remains appropriate for the States Assembly to elect 2 members of the police authority. Section 2.6 of the report referred to the Scottish and Irish police authorities, but fails to make any case for why they are superior to the Gibraltar model that Jersey has chosen to follow. In fact, in section 5 of the report, under conclusions, the CNAG did not mention anything regarding the police authority constitution. The Minister has said, or will say, that the CNAG made the recommendation, therefore the Minister followed it, ignoring the fact that the recommendation was to review the appropriateness of sitting states members to be on the authority, which is what the scrutiny panel's amendment will be asking for. To this day, since the police authority was created, there have been 4 sitting states members that have been the elected members that have been on the authority, and that and all of them are currently sitting states members. We have Senator Sarah Ferguson, Deputy Judy Martin, the Deputy of St Mary's, Deputy David Johnson, and myself. As far as I know, the Minister nor the CAG ever spoke to one of us before making recommendations or changes. I would have hoped at least the Minister during his review would have asked us, his colleagues, our opinions on the recommendation of the CNAG. At no point in this proposition, which I'm asking for, does the Minister explain how having elected states members is no longer appropriate, nor does it explain how it affects the independence of the States Jersey Police. I have been a member of the Jersey Police Authority since the 11th of November 2014, and I can say with experience that having sitting states members on the Jersey Police Authority has no impact on the police authority, as the authority has no powers to instruct. It does, however, sometimes have an impact on the independence of the minister. In my time, I've challenged the former minister about significantly reducing budget cuts to the police and managed to reduce those cuts. I've challenged the minister's review for line management changes that would have seen the chief of police directly report to the Director General. I feel that having states members on the police authority is an important check and balance in the Assembly. I don't understand why, and it's never been set out why the Scottish links models we there. I think it's very good for states members to understand about how our island is policed and be able to come and support in the Assembly with true knowledge in that manner. And this is something that the police authority does, and I think it would be a shame and wrong to remove it. Therefore, I've decided to bring this to the Assembly to ask the Assembly if they agree with me that states members hold an important part on this authority and that they do not in any way interfere with the independence of the police. I know myself, if I asked or tried to instruct our chief of police on what he should or should not be doing, he would very politely tell me, thank you for your thoughts. However, explain to me that there is no position for instruction in that manner. We are there to check, to oversee, to challenge and question, to look at the statistics that are laid out about crime or how things are done in this island, and appropriately challenge and review. It is not to instruct. With that, sir, I think I'll leave it there, and I will ask members to definitely consider the scrutiny panel's report as well, and their amendment, which would be asking for continuous review as per what the CNAG asked for, or if not, support mine, and we will just continue the way we have, which I think is the right thing to do. Let's continue with the small islands Gibraltar model and not going down some arbitrary idea of 2 other jurisdictions in the UK, sir. With that, I propose my amendment, sir.
Is Deputy Wickerton's amendment seconded?
Yes, sir.
Very well. Before I open the debate, there has been some speaking in the chat relating to the indication that I gave earlier, and I think as that may determine how people conduct the debate henceforth and how they may elect to vote at the end, I should clarify the position from a procedural point of view. The principal legislation moved by Deputy Guida at Article 4 deals with the membership of the police authority. The first amendment lodged by Deputy Wickerton that has just been proposed and seconded simply deletes that article. If the Assembly adopts it, the article is gone, and that has been the decision of the Assembly. There should be no Article 4 in the amendment. It's for that reason that if Deputy Wickerton's amendment is adopted, the second amendment, which is a different form of Article 4, falls away because there is no Article 4 to amend. Now, it could be that that is not the intention at all of the scrutiny panel when it was lodged, and it may equally be that it could have been achieved in a different way by simply substituting a new article. But my obligation is to interpret the article as it is in front of me, and it seems to me quite clear that once Article 4 is voted down, if it is voted down, then there is nothing left to amend in the scrutiny amendment. And I accept and appreciate that may not be the intent of the amendment, but that I think is the consequence of the way the amendment is currently before the Assembly on a procedural basis. Very well. Does any member wish to speak on Deputy Wickerton's amendment? Deputy Ward.
Thank you, sir. And I think I can clear up a few things here. The amendment from panel, we did speak to Deputy Wickerton regards his amendment, and it was meant to be supportive of his amendment, but to put a process of review. And the reason is simple. It is because of the CNAG's report. So before I go any further, what I would suggest is perhaps Deputy Wickenden would consider withdrawal of his amendment, because the outcome of what he wants is exactly the same with the scrutiny panel's amendment, but with the addition of a review. Now, having said that, sir, and I'm willing to take any sort of interruption during the speech, I'll carry on and finish what I was going to say regards this amendment. And the key point is exactly that. So I was going to mention this in the speech on our amendment because I thought it was coming first, if I'm honest. The CNAG recommended, and I would just now have to flick through my speech, so apologies, sir.
No.
The panel this time is unnecessary. This amendment as is does not address the recommendations of the CNAG report, who in recommendation 3 suggested a review whether it remains appropriate for the States Assembly to elect 2 members of the police authority. This current amendment, as is worded, just simply keeps those members of the police authority there with no mechanism for a review at all. That's what the scrutiny panel's work undertook, and we suggested very simply, and this is a very strange speech to have to make because we had a good discussion with Deputy Wickenden and he knows that we're on side with this and we don't want to see members lost at the moment. And the simple reason for that is that we do not know the full structure of the governance of the police at the moment, with the target operating model acting in the background, and the uniqueness of Jersey as its policing as a small island. Also, some of the other jurisdictions like Gibraltar, which actually have a particularly useful structure that I think we could use. So what we do feel is that the CNAG's report in this circumstance was not applied appropriately. Therefore, the mechanism for review is very essential if we are going to keep states members on the board. By removing this article, yes, members stay there. But unfortunately, I'm in a terrible position, one might say, of having to vote against this because it doesn't do as we've suggested and have that review in place of states members, which we suggested every 3 years, which is a very constructive thing to do because, one, it helps members of that review panel of the JPA from the States Assembly understand their role. It also, if you're going to have independence of the police, it reviews whether their role has been independent or not, whether there have been influentials in a way they shouldn't. And after that review, if we come back to the Assembly and say, actually, these members need to be removed from the JPA, then I think that's the time to have that debate. And so I think what we've got is ourselves a situation of a sort of binary choice between keep or not, and what the panel was suggesting was a, if you like, a refined binary choice of keep members but have a review of them of their role. Unfortunately, therefore, I would urge members to reject this amendment. And I will obviously talk later in full about the panel's amendment, which would retain members on JPA, but we would do so very importantly with a review mechanism in place of every 3 years, which we think is a better safeguard in the long term for that role and for ensuring the independence of the Jersey Police Authority. I hope that I've made myself clear and that's put some clarity to where we are with that situation. And apologies to Deputy Wickenden. I know we tried to talk, but there have been other circumstances, and I do not blame you at all for that, Deputy. Sir, I don't blame the Deputy at all for that. I fully understand. I just wonder whether it may be worth, if it is possible, to withdraw the amendment at this stage so that we can move on to the second amendment from the panel and get, if you like, the full package. Thank you, sir.
Deputy, that is, of course, a matter for Deputy Wickenden, and of course he can interject should he wish to take that course. Deputy St Mary.
Thank you, sir. And I do appreciate the situation which the scrutiny panel chairman finds himself in, and I will come on to a possible further solution shortly. But I speak to support Deputy Wickenden in his proposal. As a member of the panel, I believe that the presence of states members does give value, not only to what we can contribute, but also what we hear on statistics, etc. Only 2 weeks ago did I attend a meeting, and we had the current crime figures. We are aware of where there are increases in crime, where there are reductions in crime, and where the police believe that certain changes in legislation might be appropriate. And I think that the having of states members as members of the authority is a useful conduit for those matters to be taken forward. So I shall be supporting Deputy Wickenden in his amendment. As I say, I do sympathise with Deputy Ward in what he says, but I go back to the point that the CNAG recommended a review, and such review has not yet taken place, and I do not see why it is essential that this piece of legislation should encapsulate that review. If it is generally agreed that a review will be appropriate, and I hope it is, then it occurs to me that the Minister or the Assistant Minister today could simply give an undertaking to conduct such a review, and that review might actually go further and look into the frequency of the reporting requirement, which is another matter which the scrutiny panel chairman raised. So my view, sir, is that we should support Deputy Wickenden's amendment, that is open to any member if the Minister does not wish to bring a separate piece of legislation for conducting a review, which might go further than simply looking at the period of annual reporting. So I hope so that is some contribution, and I will stop there. Thank you, sir.
Very much. Deputy Senator Ferguson.
Thank you, sir. Deputy Wickenden thought that being a member of the Jersey Police Authority gives a very good background on policing in the island. I would suggest that joining the honorary police prior to standing for the states would give a much better understanding of policing. For example, we have a parish hall inquiry system which is envied by a lot of authorities in the UK, and for the benefit of the Deputy of Grouville, this is really part of our identity. It keeps youngsters out of court. But it's also possible that we should separate the law enforcement body from the law-taking body. You know, I wonder if this is the reason that the UK countries do not have politicians on their police authorities. Could the Attorney General comment on that, perhaps?
You have a question for the Attorney General, and that is he aware whether, or is what would be the reason that politicians are not on other police authorities? Is that the
Yes.
question, Senator?
Yes.
Attorney, are you able to assist?
Sarah, I'm not sure that I can immediately assist beyond what's already stated in the proposition and the accompanying comments and the amendments. I think the overall purpose behind the England and Wales is, and it seems Scotland and Ireland's arrangements for their police forces and the lack of politicians on them, it is to ensure a lack of political influence in its broadest sense on operational policing matters. Sorry, sir. So, sir, I'm not sure that I can assist beyond that. Clearly, our policing arrangements are different from those of the UK. As the Senator noted, we have the honorary police system, so it is not necessarily the case that we have to follow UK models whether they be England and Wales, Scotland or Ireland, in some sort of slavish sense. I would simply state that it's a matter for members to consider what is the most appropriate model for our needs here, our needs as Jersey, and I hope that assists.
Very much. Yes, do you wish to carry on with your speech, Senator? Senator Ferguson, have you finished your speech?
I have indeed, sir.
Thank you very much. Deputy Higgins.
Thank you, sir. Members have got to remember that what we're actually doing is following a recommendation from the Controller and Auditor General, and she wanted us to review the situation. Well, the Assembly is doing that right now. In this debate, we're deciding whether we agree with her that the political representatives on the police authority should be removed. Some may feel they should, others may feel they're not, and we're at liberty to accept or reject her recommendations. Now, Deputy Wickenden has said that no case has been made by the Controller and Auditor General, nor by the Home Affairs Minister, as to why we should change the existing system. No real argument, just a number of statements. And as such, we could argue that, to use a Scottish phrase, the case for change has not been proven. Now, I'm a member of the scrutiny panel, and I do not accept, and this is because of the order in which these are being debated now, that we should not accept Deputy Wickenden's proposition in favour of our own. And the reason I say that is that if members, any member, felt in the future that a review of the police authority should take place, then all they have to do is bring a proposition to the states and the matter can be debated again. And perhaps at that time, someone would come up with some very good arguments as to why. So I shall be supporting Deputy Wickenden's amendment. And I might add, if that falls, and I'll also go for the backdrop of the scrutiny one. But I do not believe the case has been made, and therefore I will support Deputy Wickenden. Thank you.
Any other member wish to speak on Deputy Wickenden's amendment? Another member wishes to speak?
Yes, please.
Yes, Deputy Guida, you may speak.
Yes, very quickly. I still remember painfully being on the other side of Deputy Wickenden when we were talking about the reorganization of the police about 2 years ago. And I think this is a perfect example of why this direct link between the Assembly and the police authority is actually useful. And although I was, of course, trying to enforce it at the time, I think that the resolution of the Assembly 2 years ago was actually quite wise and driven by Deputy Wickenden. So the Minister is quite balanced on the subject, but I do think that this Assembly has a place on the JPA. Thank you, sir.
Very much, Deputy. Does any other member wish to speak on the amendment? Deputy Young.
So yes, I've come into this completely neutral, and having heard the arguments, I am very attracted by Deputy Wickenden's arguments. I'm not hearing any real reason other than, well, the Controller and Auditor General has recommended that we do that. And reading Deputy Wickenden's amendment, he refers to the fact that there's been a series of members who've been on the panel. I've never heard there's been any problems in practice, and the amendment records that the CAG didn't have a discussion with individual members. And generally speaking, I am now starting to worry about where we do distance so many of the public administration or public government or public roles, we can distancing it from the elected members, and I'm worried about that. So I think I just heard Deputy Guida, I hope I heard him correctly, that I think he's seeing the merits of having political engagement, and if it is, I think then I think that he's really sort of conceding the argument. But either way, I am worried about the erosion of the closeness. I was very attracted to what was said about the honorary police issue, because the closeness of the closeness of our community is one of the reasons for its success. And of course, I do ask the question that if the CAG's recommendations is based on a model in Ireland and Scotland, I ask, well, do the kind of special circumstances that apply there, do they apply in Jersey? That's the question I put. I don't put an answer to it, but it seems to be so. And I think Deputy Higgins was very persuasive when he said, well, if we leave it as it is, as Deputy Wickenden's amendment does, there's nothing to stop anybody putting in a proposition and changing things in the future. So I think I'm pretty persuaded with Deputy Wickenden. I think the scrutiny panel have done a very, very good job trying to find a middle ground, in order to recognise that, listen to the CNAG. But I think on this occasion, I think the balance points to Deputy Wickenden. That's my reaction, sir. Thank you.
Well, does any other member wish to speak on Deputy Wickenden's amendment? No other member. Senator Varwar?
Yes, thank you, sir. I'm speaking as a member of the panel who extensively reviewed this piece of legislation, and the particular subject that we're talking about here, and I have to make it clear, the scrutiny panel are very much of the consideration at the moment that States members should continue to be a member of the Jersey Police Authority. And the reasoning for that, sir, was because when we pushed and asked for why the actual recommendation by the CNAG hadn't been fulfilled, because it asked for a review. So taking that into context, in the time in which the JPA has been running, we don't believe any review has been carried out of its effectiveness and the role that States members play on that. There is one very important reason for States members being on there, and that being in particular the fact that control of the budget and the way that the budgeting works, and the fact that the JPA have actually had under-resourcing for a period of time, hence the reason the lack of inspections being carried out. And their ability to effectively do the things which are expected of them, which we see time and time again with many of the bodies that are set up to do very good and important work, but not necessarily resourced to do it effectively. And so having States members on there also enables that second pair of eyes from a States Assembly point of view to ensure that when a budget is requested or needed in terms of the JPA, or actually resourcing in terms of the police, then if the funds that are coming forward in the government plan by the minister are not sufficient, that can be rightfully challenged democratically in the States Assembly and amended, particularly by those States members that sit on the JPA, because they would have been at the forefront of discussing the policing plan and, of course, the budget that would be requested via the Minister for the Government Plan. And the purpose for the amendment from the scrutiny panel was purely because we recognise it's important to regularly review the work and effectiveness and whether there is a need for States members going forwards, because it may not always be the case. Hence the reason why we put that amendment forward. Now, if the Minister and a Deputy of St Mary's mentioned that the Minister could just do a review, well, yes, they could just do a review. So the question is, why didn't they do that review when the recommendation was made by the CNAG in 2018? And why still haven't they undertaken that review now whilst we're debating this? It was an attempt at a middle ground, but it's also a recognition of what was being recommended by the CNAG. And we also have to recognise the arguments that Deputy Wickenden was making with regards to the fact that our JPA was set up on the basis of a small island jurisdiction, Gibraltar, and the comparisons made with the likes of Scotland or anywhere else in the UK may not necessarily be effective or helpful in the terms of the jurisdiction within which we sit. So if that helps members for consideration around the amendments, I think there might have been some slight procedural issues from our end, and we apologise to members for that. But I wanted to try and explain it a little bit clearer so that it enables people to consider how they're going to vote with regards to the amendment. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Senators, does any other member wish to speak on this amendment? No other member wishes to speak on the amendment? Then I close the debate and call upon Deputy Wickenden to respond.
Thank you, sir. I'd really like to thank Deputy Ward and Senator Valois for inviting me in to discuss my amendment and my views and experiences on the Jersey Police Authority. They have done an absolute excellent review into this law and a really good comments paper. And I agree. I'm not going to withdraw this because we are where we are now. Let's have the vote. I want to make clear that I feel that there is no issue with independence, and that's from a long time being on the panel. I see there's nothing that would create that problem of independence. I would like to mention this. Senator Ferguson's absolutely right. Joining the Honorary Police, and I'd like to thank everyone that's on the Honorary Police and the hard work that they do, is obviously a great way of understanding more about policing in this island before getting elected. Unfortunately, not everyone has that opportunity or the ability to do those things, and this is just another way. They're not on their own. Deputy Higgins obviously saying, well, this is the review. We talk about the Assembly, we debate it, we review and get a chance to ask questions. Senator Valois mentioned very well, and I think that is something that's very clear, is that if there is funding issues, being on the Jersey Police Authority allows you to see ongoing timelines of where challenges happen within policing, within the statistics, to be able to discuss it. And if it's felt that there are funding issues that need to be dealt with, that hasn't come across in the government plan, states members are the best place to be able to articulate that from being on the Jersey Police Authority and hopefully get agreement of the Assembly if more funding is required and why it's required and how it would be used. I think I'm just going to end up by also thanking there's a number of members of non-elected and on the Jersey Police Authority that give up their time for free and a lot of time to come and help out on the Jersey Police Authority, and I think they do an amazing job in that voluntary role that they hold, and I'd like to thank them and the time that I've worked with them over the last 6 years, and the chairman. With that, sir, I think there's nothing more to add. I think it really is. The CNAG has said that there should possibly be a review. The scrutiny panel have come back with an amendment that asks and says, well, let's have a regular review and do it that way. So I'm just saying that one or the other. I'd still like to make sure that we hold there, but if people would support me, we can look at another way. If not, the scrutiny panel's there as well, and they've done an amazing job. So with that, I ask the appellant, please.
Well, thank you very much, Deputy Wickenden. The appel is called for, and I ask the greffier to add a vote into the chat channel. And I open the voting and ask members to vote. Members have had the opportunity of casting their votes. I ask the greffier to close the voting. The amendment is adopted. 26 votes pour, 17 votes contre, no abstentions in the link, and a further 1 vote pour in the, 1 vote contre in the chat. Very well. That deals with Article 4. We then move on to articles. Well, how do you wish to propose the rest of the articles in second reading, Deputy Guida?
I am quite ready to accept the second part of the scrutiny amendment, which changes Article 10 and requires a systematic 4-yearly inspection of the police force. So if they allow me to integrate their amendment, then I will put all the articles, all the remaining articles en bloc.
Well, I think the way it has to work, Deputy, we can do it very quickly, but I think you must propose up to the amendment to Article 10, and then you can indicate you're accepting that amendment, but it must, I think, be taken as a separate vote because other members may take a different view.
Absolutely, very well. Therefore, I would like to propose Articles 5 to 9 en bloc, sir, please.
Well, are the Articles 5 to 9 seconded en bloc?
They are, sir.
Does any member wish to speak on Articles 5 to 9 or any of them? If no member wishes to speak, then I close any debate and invite the greffier to put that link into the chat for a vote on Articles 5 to 9. I open the voting and ask members to vote. Members have had the opportunity of casting their votes. I ask the greffier to close the voting. Articles 5 to 9 have been adopted in second reading. 43 votes pour, no votes contre, no abstention in the link, and a further 2 votes pour recorded in the chat. You propose Article 10 and indicate to the Assembly you'll accept the amendment. Is that correct, Deputy Guida?
Absolutely, sir. I'm proposing Article 10 as amended.
Very well. Technically, you're indicating you'll accept the amendment, but is that seconded?
Yes, sir.
And there's an amendment now to Article 10, and I ask the greffier to read the amendment.
Page 17, Article 10. In Article 10, in the inserted Article 28AA2B, for subject to the police authority having adequate resources to commission an inspection, substitute which must be at least once every 4 years.
Deputy Ward.
Thank you, sir. Every cloud has a silver lining, and the silver lining is this is a much shorter speech. So I think that's good for everybody. The second, and it seems a very minor amendment, but it's quite an important one, is just to remove the wording that says subject to resourcing because of the importance of inspection of the States and Jersey Police as a minimum every 4 years. And we're very pleased that it's been accepted by the Minister as an amendment. So there's not much more to say about it than that. But it does remove any possibility of delays due to funding issues, which perhaps we would hope wouldn't happen, but it just gives some certainty as the independence of the police increases, and so that we can have a regular inspection, which is, we believe, vital for confidence in our police force and vital to ensure that our police force in Jersey is working as effectively as possible and for the good of the islands, as I'm sure every member of the police wants to work to achieve. So with that, that is all I will have to say on that. Thank you.
Very much. Is the amendment seconded? Any member wish to speak on that amendment? No member wishes to speak on that amendment. One Harbison, one.
Thank you, sir. I've just got a couple of very quick questions on the amendment. Firstly, if either the chair of the scrutiny panel or the original proposer could just comment on the 4-year period and why that time period was arrived at. And secondly, if we could just have some idea of the cost of an inspection, just so we know the quantum of what we're voting for, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Any other member wish to speak on that amendment? No other member wishes to speak. Deputy St Mary?
Yes, very briefly. The present system, of course, is that the police authority will require an inspection when practicable, and I think they would like the flexibility of that, though hoping to stay within the 4-year guideline. And the other aspect is the costs, which the Deputy St Juan has referred to. It's perhaps a strange situation that the JPA can require an inspection without itself being guaranteed the funds, although in practical terms it will by itself be committing the minister to financing it, and it does seem slightly unusual for that power to be given to the authority to make a decision which is going to require extra funding without any input from the minister. That's the only comment I have, sir.
Very much, Deputy Mary. Does any other member wish to speak on this amendment? No other member wishes to speak. Then I close the debate and call upon Deputy Ward to respond.
Thank you, sir. That was a lot quicker than I thought the debate was going to be, and I'm still searching through my notes for the answer to that. So the 4 years was a certainty of a time span of reviews, so that inspections were not missed. It also coincides to some extent with the term of office of ministers, for example, and the term of office that we have, so that there is a response to the workings of the police on a regular basis. In terms of the funding issue, I think that's a very good point that's made, and I think we need to think very carefully about, if we are going to have independence of our police force, there has to be some sort of oversight, and it has to be regular. We do this in hospitals, we do this in schools, we do this in other areas of our public service, and I think the panel believe that this is a very important issue in terms of timescales. Otherwise, there is the opportunity for drift, and that's the last thing that we want with the changing nature of policing as well. And funding should not be an issue. I cannot give a figure on a funding of the cost of an inspection. I think that would depend on the type of inspection, where it comes from, and I'm sure there may well be a bidding process for that anyway. It also ties into the 4-year policing plan, which is part of the changes that are made in this overall amendments. It seems incongruent to have a 4-year policing plan without a 4-year inspection process as well. The two seem to go hand in hand. So those were the main reasons for the 4 years. I think that's just about everything I can say, and I hope that's an adequate answer for the constable there. And I do apologise to Deputy Johnson, I can't give you a figure. However, I think there is a principle underlying that whatever that figure is, if we are going to have this built in, it needs to happen. I don't think it's prohibitive amount of money, and I think that with any inspection, the positive impact of a good inspection, and I don't mean good as in outcomes, I mean as in process, for any public service, will certainly be cost effective in the long term. So I think that that's a very important point to take into consideration. And with that, so I hope that, and I thank the Minister for accepting the amendment, and I hope the Assembly will accept the amendment too. Thank you, sir.
Much. Deputy Ward asks the greffier to put a vote into the link. And I open the voting and ask members to vote. Members have had the opportunity of casting their votes. Then I ask the greffier to close the voting. The amendment has been adopted. 42 votes pour, no votes contre, no abstentions in the link, and a further 3 votes pour noted in the chat. Do you propose then Article 10 as amended, Deputy Guida? Deputy Guida, do you propose Article 10 as amended?
Sorry, the mute button bounces. So yes, sir, I would propose the Article 10 as amended.
Yes, you do indeed. Does any other member wish to speak on Article 10 as amended? If no member wishes to speak, then I close the debate and ask the greffier to place a voting link in the chat. And I'll ask greffier to open the voting. Members have had the opportunity of casting their votes. Ask the greffier to close the voting. Article 10 as amended has been adopted in second reading. 43 votes pour, no votes contre, no abstentions.
We have 11
in the link, and I think a further 2 votes pour in the chat. Was somebody calling for the numbers or calling for the names? Very well. We now come to the remaining articles 11 to 13. Deputy Guida, do you wish to propose the articles in second reading?
Yes, sir. I'd like to propose Article 11 to 13.
Are those articles seconded?
They are, sir.
Does any member wish to speak on articles 11 to 13? No member wishes to speak on articles 11 to 13. Then I close any debate and ask the greffier to place a vote into the link. I open the voting and ask members to vote. Members have had the opportunity of casting their votes. Then I ask the referee to close the voting. Those articles have been passed in second reading, 40 votes pour, no votes contre, no abstentions in the link, and a further 2 votes pour noted in the chat. Do you move the articles in third reading, Deputy Guida?
Yes, sir, please.
Are they seconded for third reading?
Yes, they are, sir.
Does any member wish to speak in third reading? If no member wishes to speak in third reading, do you wish to speak in third reading, Deputy Ward? Deputy Ward.
So just very briefly, just to say, I want to say a big thank you to the work of the scrutiny officers who in really short order put together a very detailed document with the panel. And I'd like to particularly thank Senator Valois for her support with the work that went on. Welcome member of the panel. And we're pleased that we have made the amendments. And I'd also just like to say it is a very positive response from the Minister. When we asked for this to be delayed, it was done without question. And I think that's an important point to make for scrutiny, that sometimes that response from the Minister is appreciated and it allows us to do the work that we need to do. So with that, so I just wanted to make that point. Thank you, sir.
Very much indeed. Does any other member wish to speak in third reading? No member wishes to speak in third reading? Then I close the debate and call upon Deputy Guida to respond.
Sir, thank you very much. I would like again to thank Scrutiny, all the officers who participated in the development of this law, the States of Jersey Police and the JPA were consulted for their help in developing something that was actually quite important. And I thank the Assembly for having supported it so far. And
very much.
In third reading.
Thank you very much indeed. I ask the referee to place a vote into the link. And open the voting and ask members to vote. Members have had the opportunity of casting their votes. I ask the referee to close the voting. The law has been adopted in third reading, 40 votes pour, no votes contre, no abstention in the link, and a further 2 votes noted pour in the chat. The next item of public business is the draft eligibility for election amendment of laws Jersey Law P22, lodged by the Privileges and Procedures Committee for the purpose of the debate. The main respondent will be the chair of the Corporate Services Scrutiny Panel, and I ask the greffier to read the citation.
Draft eligibility for election amendment of laws Jersey Law 2000, a law to amend the eligibility requirement for election as a senator or deputy under the States of Jersey Law 2005 or a connotab under the Connotabs Jersey Law 2008. The states, subject to the sanction of Her Most Excellent Majesty and Council, have adopted the following law.
Deputy Alves.
Thank you, sir. We have lodged this law in order to implement the Assembly's adoption of P75, Senators and Deputies Removal of Citizenship Requirement, which was lodged by Deputy Tadia in 2020. This law would amend the States of Jersey law, which deals with the qualification criteria for senators and deputies, and the Connétabs law, which provides the qualification criteria for Connétabs. In voting for Part B and Part D of Deputy Tadia's proposition, members agreed that a person should have a continuous period of residency of 5 years and be entitled for work under the Control of Housing and Work Regulations in order to be eligible to stand for election as a senator, connétable or deputy. The current requirement for senators, deputies and connétables is that they have to be a British citizen who have been ordinarily in Jersey for a period of at least 2 years, or ordinarily resident in Jersey for 6 months, in addition to being ordinarily resident at any time for an additional period or periods totaling at least 5 years. This law has been drafted with the interpretation that candidates should have at least entitled for work status rather than only entitled for work status. In bringing this law forward for debate, Sir, PPC wished to make it clear that we have only lodged this legislation because we were duty bound to under Part D of Deputy Tadia's proposition. We believe that this change will significantly restrict the number of people eligible to stand for election compared to the current position. Therefore, we would urge members to consider very carefully the consequences this change would have on the eligibility criteria for those thinking about standing for election in the future. So I propose the principles.
Are the principles seconded? Does any member wish to speak on the principles? Deputy Young.
So time is short, so I'm going to speak briefly. This decision, when we discussed it earlier, was an absolute mess. We got in a complete procedural pickle. We ended up with a crazy amendment which put very great restrictions. The idea that not only is somebody got to be continuously resident for 5 years on the day, up to the day, and that you can't take into account other periods. And then not only that, on top of that, they've got to have the entitled under the, frankly, sir, there's no way I'm going to vote this out, sir. Thank you, sir.
Very much. Deputy Morell.
Thank you, sir. And I stand at odds with Deputy Young because when he says it was a procedural mess, etc., etc., no, what it was it was not the result the proposer of that proposition wanted. That was all that happened that day, if we remember. Indeed, I am disappointed that the chair of the Procedures and Privileges Committee speaks against the proposition, given that in the electoral reform debate recently, a great amount was made of the fact that the in-principle decision had been taken, and therefore, how could anyone bring amendments, which I voted against. But Privileges and Procedures Committee at the time was saying, no, the in-principle decision has been made, this is just signing off on the legislation. And so to take that stand then and to take a different stand now, I find unfortunate and not a position I expect the Privileges and Procedures Committee to find itself in, because I expect that to be a very neutral committee in that way. And so, sir, I believe that this is an opportunity for us to right a mistake that was made in the past, and I stand to be corrected. I believe it may have been Deputy Sutton who brought the proposition which reduced to 2 years the requirement for living in Jersey before standing for election. I felt then, as an islander, not a member of the States, just an islander on my own, that was a mistake. Very happy for people to be voting after 2 years. That's absolutely fine. But to stand for election, I do believe you should show and have shown your commitment to this island before you're even available for nomination to election. And for that reason, I do feel that whilst the proposer did not intend the result that came that day last year, it was after COVID, because I remember attending remotely, but it was approximately a year ago. That was not what the proposer wanted, but it was the result that the Assembly wanted and the Assembly gave. And so I urge members to accept this proposition, to support this proposition, and to right the wrong of a few years ago, and make sure that all candidates for election are able to show their commitment this island by having lived here for 5 years. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Higgins.
Thank you, sir. I'm going to align myself with Deputy Young and disagree with Deputy Morell. I remember that debate very well because we got into a pickle. We got very confused. And as a person who has never been afraid to admit when they got things wrong, I got it wrong. I actually voted for the 5 years, and yet I didn't intend to. I was confused at the time the debate took place. Other members were, and I really do believe that if we made a mistake, we should own up to it. We want people to stand for election to the states. We want people to vote. We should not be putting hurdles in the way of the populace. So, sir, I ask states members, you know we made a mistake. Let's correct it. Let's vote down this legislation. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Deputy Southern. Deputy Southern.
Thank you, sir. Just finding my microphone. Just briefly to say that, yes, we made a mistake. And yes, we can put it right today. We can vote this out. 5 years is a ridiculous period to demand when it's 2 years for voting. If you're involved in the process, in the political process, after 2 years, sufficient to vote, you should be sufficient to stand. Thank you.
Very much, Deputy. Does any other member wish to speak on the principles? Senator Mezek.
Thank you, sir. I entirely agree with what my colleague Deputy Southern has just said. For me, the point of principle is that I think the franchise for being able to vote should be the same as the franchise for being able to stand. I don't see why there ought to be a discrepancy between them. And I have to say, I'm a little bit annoyed at what I hear from some members, not just in this debate, but in other debates as well, where some people seem to think you enhance democracy by restricting voters' choices. So that's utterly nonsense. And Deputy Morell's point is nonsense. If you have to demonstrate some sort of commitment to the island before being able to stand for politics, and that's such an important thing, then trust the voters to not vote for candidates who haven't made that demonstration. Don't deprive them of the choice. And there are all sorts of other instances that could be included in this for why people may be standing or why they may not be standing. Trust the voters, let them make the choice, and let's throw this out because it represents a step backwards.
Deputy Doublé.
Thank you, sir. Just a note from the Diversity Forum, because we did discuss this at our, I think it was our last meeting, and the forum wishes to express opposition to this draft law because it will decrease the pool of candidates, the potential pool of candidates, and therefore potentially decrease the diversity of those candidates. And it is my opinion, sir, and in agreement with some of the previous speakers, that if there is a high quality candidate who meets all the other criteria and that candidate is acceptable to the electorate, we should not be adding additional barriers. So I will be voting against this today.
Thank you very much, Deputy. There's a question, Deputy Tadier, you wish to ask of the Attorney General?
Yeah, thank you, sir. It's just to try and understand, if this is passed today, what the 5 years continuous means, what it will mean in law. Because I know that, for example, we've probably all dealt with, I've certainly dealt with members of the public who have tried to get their 10 years qualification, for example, or 5 years for work purposes. And if they have any gaps, for whatever reason that they can't prove, either because they were away or they weren't away, but they just can't document the fact that they were here, then they have great difficulty in securing the 5 or 10 year rule. And so I just wanted to ask, if we pass this today, it seems to me that there's a 5 years continuous in addition to having your entitlement to work. And what, for example, is the maximum period that somebody could be away for in the last 5 years in order to break that continuity?
Attorney, are you able to assist? I think the question relates to the meaning of ordinary resident.
So yes, ordinary residence is a term that is generally of most significance in relation to tax status, and it is usually seen in that context. It means effectively where someone calls home, but I would have to check whether there is a specific period of, say, 3 months, which would sort of break a person's ordinary residence such that they would have to effectively carry out extra time in order to comply with the requirement. But I can check overnight if that assists.
Thank you very much, Mr. Attorney. Next to speak, Senator Ferguson.
Thank you, sir. Yes, you know, we hear people saying that the system is complicated. So can they actually complain, you know, that they have to be resident for longer than 6 months before they stand? You know, there are a lot of civilian, as one might say, organisations where there is a time limit before being able to stand. There are also other organisations like being a congressman in the US, where you've got to be a certain age before you're able to stand. So, you know, you can't have sort of child politicians. You know, I agree with Deputy Morell. You know, you've got to demonstrate a commitment to the island before you actually stand. You know, you can't just come in on 6 months residency and then stand for election. I'm sorry, that doesn't make sense, and there's no commitment. Thank you, sir.
Very much, Senator. There are 2 further questions, I think, for the Attorney General. I will take Deputy Hegaraf first because the Constable Simon wishes to speak immediately after his question. So, Deputy Hegaraf.
Thank you, sir. I just wanted to clarify a point in relation to the employment law, because obviously, and entitlement to work, and maybe I have just missed it. I just want to clarify that how does being an elected member of the states actually fit in with the sort of ability to be the employment law and the ability to be allowed to work in Jersey? So I'd just like to, if that makes sense, I'd just like to clarify that to ensure that actually people can stand for election having been here for 2 years, but technically speaking, they may be restricted from working, if that makes sense, sir.
Are you able to assist, Mr. Attorney?
So I just wanted to clarify with the Deputy the exact meaning of that question. The membership of the states is obviously it's not an employment relationship. It's an office. So is she asking me whether being a states member counts for the purposes of housing status and the ability to separately?
I'm sure the Deputy will correct me if I'm wrong, but I understood the question. Deputy, you will please correct me if I'm getting this in the slightest bit wrong. It was a question of whether or not it would be possible to stand for the states but not be qualified to work. Yes, that appears to be the nature of the question, Mr. Attorney.
Could I reflect on that, please?
Do you have a further question for the Attorney, Constable of St. Wom?
Yes, sir. Thank you. It's a pick up from the previous question to the Attorney. I'm very concerned about the term ordinarily resident because that's a very specific tax term. And I'm sure the Attorney will be clear when he comes back, but my concern is that the definition is in the proposal, and if we approve it, how challengeable is it by somebody who wants to remove somebody from standing for office? So maybe the Attorney could just clarify whether the term ordinarily resident is good enough to be subject to challenge. The other consideration we might want to think about if the Attorney comes back and says that that isn't a particularly good definition is domicile in the Isle of Jersey, but again that's also full of problems.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. And I wonder, there's a further question for the attorney. It might be as well to get all of the questions out, and then your turn to speak will come, Constable Wilson, if that's all right. Deputy Tadier, you have a further question for the attorney.
Yes, I mean, it's really just to ask the attorney if he agrees. And in a sense, I've had something of an epiphany since I asked my question, because of course we are dealing with ordinarily resident, not continuous, and I think that's a difference. And can the Attorney General confirm that we're not inventing a new concept here, because it's already a requirement under the current law to be ordinarily resident for 2 years? If we adopted this, we'd simply be extending that to 5 years. So any yeah, so there must be a definition already which exists, and whether or not checks are done on that, I don't know. But could the attorney just confirm that we're not creating a new concept?
It seems to me that inevitably the attorney has asked for time to consider this. That will mean that he will not be able to advise before the close of the ordinary business of the Assembly today. It may be sensible, therefore, to deal with one or two, perhaps two further speakers, depending upon how long they wish to speak for. But then the Assembly might wish to consider whether it wishes to then adjourn overnight, and the attorney can advise the following day. That may be the appropriate way forward. I simply put that forward for members' consideration at this point. Next to speak, Conatable St Wall.
Thank you, sir, and I will await the attorney's comments with interest. I'm not going to speak for very long, but just to express a little bit of disappointment. We've spent many hours in this chamber debating on how to achieve a mix of members that makes voter participation better and improves it. And yet here we are today talking about moving to a 5-year period where we'll be disqualifying people who could be extremely eligible to be elected. And I accept what Deputy Morrell says about how showing commitment to the island, but at the end of the day, I would counter that by saying that it's really the electors to choose whether they think people are committed to the island and whether they have sufficient qualification to sit in this assembly. And I think that's really the point. At the end of the day, we need to set a minimum criteria which we feel people are qualified to sit in this chamber. Whether they have commitment or the quality to sit here is really a decision that the electors should be asked to make, not us. All we're doing is setting a hurdle which people should be required to jump over. And I don't think, in my view, and obviously I'm prepared to be corrected by others, that hurdle should be too high. Not especially as we've spent hours and hours debating on whether we should have 3 classes of members or 2 classes of members or 1 class of member, a decision that seemed to take us hours and hours to get to and caused us a great deal of angst. And yet here we are talking about what is quite a serious method of removing quality people from the field. And frankly, I think I would find it extremely difficult to support this. So I think we need to just look at this as a hurdle rather than as a qualification, because I think at the end of the day, it's the electors that make the final decision about who sits in this chamber. We should just be setting a minimum standard. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Conatable. Deputy Wickenden.
Thank you, sir. I rose to speak actually on support of what some Deputy Morrell said. I was quite shocked when I read the report that was linked to this proposition, this law change, and how political it was. I think PPC has a really strong position of being as apolitical as possible because it deals with the rules for all members. And to have the concerns written in here to highlight areas like the vote for last time and those things, I feel is not acceptable from this committee. Each member of the committee can speak in this assembly on their own views, but to have a view from a supposedly apolitical committee that is so pushing in a direction when the assembly voted on this situation. We've had it time and again, and we had it on the electoral reform. The Assembly voted to go in a direction, and that was the majority vote that had happened, and all of a sudden, and it couldn't be changed, and that was right. But now we're coming along and saying, well, we think everyone was wrong, or they didn't understand what they were doing, and I think that's very unfair on this assembly. This was a decision by the assembly. PPC have brought forward what the decision of the assembly was. I think that it should be kept that way. Otherwise, just tying ourselves in knots, sir. I'm going to be supporting this law change. I think it's the right move. Thank you, sir.
Very well. There's probably a time for one further member to speak. Well, I have no other member listed for speaking. I have no other member particularly. Deputy Martin.
Yeah, I've only got a few minutes, sir, so I'll go now rather than dream about it all night. I'm very concerned, and I hope the Attorney General will come back and state what ordinary resident is previous to 5 years before the election. But it also says and entitled for work, or entitled, or there's a third category, licence. So yeah. Even if you've got someone here on a licence, you brought them over on a licence, they might be great. Well, I suppose they lose their licence, but they could work for the states. But I do think people should be very careful what they wish for today. So you've got youngsters who have gone to uni. They spend their time in uni, they spend 20 years away, they come back to the island and they miss the election next year. You're actually telling them, I think, the way I read it, and I'd like the attorney overnight to tell me if I'm wrong, those Jersey kids, I mean, you know, they were born here, done 18 years in school, then went to uni, but decided to settle, but came back 20 years later, could not stand for election until the 2030 elections, because if they come back next year after the elections, they haven't done 5 years in 26, and they wouldn't be able to stand until 30. I think it's mad. I think we want to encourage diversity, as Deputy Dubé said, and it could be a returning male bringing his wife, and or either way, it doesn't matter. Somebody wants to offer something to the island, and we're just going to make it harder. But I would like the attorney overnight to just check these two hang together. So people have been telling me you can pick which one you like, sir. I don't think that's true. And then the constable of someone said, well, we could use a different definition. No, the proposition is what it is. It'll either be this or that. But to me, it just puts the barrier much too high when we want a lot more diversity and youngsters or middle-aged people at least. Thank you, sir. I've done my 3 minutes.
Much. Congratulations on the timing. Deputy Martin, there's a point of clarification. Deputy Morell, is that a clarification of your speech, or are you seeking a point of clarification of Deputy Martin's
Deputy
speech?
Martin's.
Yes, what is the point of clarification?
Yeah, it was about Deputy Martin seemed to be suggesting that a child born here, educated here, and who then went off to university for a few years wouldn't be qualified. And I'd just like her to clarify that that is certainly the case, because I very much don't believe that that is the case. But
well,
thank you, sir.
I think Deputy Martin was actually hoping the Attorney General would confirm the position on that when he came back.
Exactly, sir, and I'd like to hear the legal position, because I've been arguing with states members for the overnight on this, and Deputy Morell has a different idea to me. One of us is right. Thank you, sir.
Sorry, sir, I didn't hear her ask the AG a question. I thought that was just a speech, sir.
It was just a speech, but she expressed the hope the Attorney General would advise upon that. Mr. Attorney, I think that is a further question for you to advise upon when you return to the Assembly tomorrow morning.
That's noted.
The adjournment, sir.
I beg your pardon?
Propose the adjournment, sir.
Yes, the adjournment is proposed. They've all got to.
Sir, can I just...
Deputy Tellier indicated a desire to speak briefly.
Yeah, I mean, I don't wish to bribe members, but if I speak, I literally speak for maximum of 5 minutes now, or I might be more lengthy tomorrow. But the real reason is I'm gonna have to be absent for part of tomorrow morning, and I wouldn't want to miss the opportunity, sir, given that I feel partly responsible for why we're in this situation. So I'll leave that with members if they would allow me to speak for up to 5 minutes now.
Well, I think it was Deputy Southern who proposed the adjournment, wasn't it? Deputy Southern, do you wish to withdraw that? Very much. Then I'll call on Deputy Tellier, and then someone can propose the adjournment after that. Deputy Tellier.
Thank you, sir. So I can't comment on whether or not the Assembly knew what they were doing when they voted for this, but I do recall that there was perhaps some lack of clarity from some members about what was going on following a very, I thought, good and close vote. Obviously, a vote that I was slightly disappointed that didn't go my way on the substantive proposition of nationality. And I do want to bring it back to that just to contextualise it, because what I brought to the Assembly was very much a package, and it sought to, when looked at holistically, it was broadly what you'd call a progressive package, in the sense that it was designed to allow many more people to stand for election, some for the first time, based on merit, on a meritocracy, rather than what I would call an arbitrary nationality requirement. Now, I'm not seeking to reopen that debate here today, but it is simply to say that all of those parts were to hang together, and the other parts were necessary because there seemed to be some debate about what was an acceptable period of time, qualifying time, to be in the island. And of course there were two aspects to it, one which built on the 2 years minimum requirement up until the day, but it was a 5-year requirement. If you've been here for it's 5 years and 6 months up to including the election, which in itself is quite messy, I think. So it sought to square the circle of the fact that why would we have people working here as states members if they couldn't work in another sector? And I think this needs to be looked at again by perhaps a group of people, perhaps those, there is a coalition, I believe, in the States now who want to open up the membership beyond the usual British only requirement. And I think we need to get our heads together to find out how we do that. I think just by implementing these changes today on their own, they would take us a step back, sir. So I would ask members to consider, if they are genuine about wanting to get a wider membership, to talk to me, because I will be coming back to the States Assembly at some point for another try at not removing the British nationality per se, but allowing non-British nationals to be able to stand for election on their own merit. And I believe that there may be wider support, and I'd like to hear from those members who support that as to what might be acceptable, sir. So I think I've kept within the 5 minutes, sir. I can't support this today, as I couldn't on its own last year when it came to the Assembly, but I would like to work constructively with those members who feel that it's right that we have a more progressive, a more representative States Assembly, but one which is ultimately controlled by the electorate, because it's up to them to have the say as to who should sit in our Assembly. So thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Deputy, is the adjournment proposed?
Yes, sir.
Very well, the Assembly stands adjourned until 9:30 tomorrow morning.